Just when you thought it was safe to put on your headphones, you entered the darkest, wildest, sexiest depths of technology. And here to keep you on the bleeding edge of science, tech, and ethics is the Rated R radio star, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Woo! All right, it is time for Sovryn Tech, baby, the hottest goddamn tech show in the world today. And I am the golden stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, the man that some call the most interesting anarchist alive today. And I'll tell you something, I'm going to up the ante on that interesting anarchist. But first, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do that in just a second. But, oh man, you know, I got to admit, I have had it. I don't know. I think I got to make it past PorcFest, which if you don't know, PorcFest.com or PorcFest.org, PorcFest.com, whatever. Anyway, I'm going to be speaking at PorcFest this year, 2017, of course. And I think I just got to like get past that hump, and then maybe I can relax. I've had such a crazy schedule. Not that it really has to do with PorcFest. I mean, it kind of does, but oh man, I can't keep up with it all. It's madness. It's a miracle of God. No, I'm sorry. It's a miracle of Satan that I can even get out of Sovryn Tech. No, that's not true. I've been putting out tons of content. If you're not a patron, I mean, the patrons are, they're running wild, because I think almost every day this week I released something, a podcast of some sort on there. We had the 2 live hangouts in the past week. We're going to have another live hangout coming out in June, because now we're in June 2017. I can't believe that. I don't know. Where the hell does the time go? I mean, fortunately, time has been forever, so whatever. But anyway, man, yeah, just crazy schedule. So, but we've got a ton to talk about in this episode. We're going to get into a subject that I don't steer clear from necessarily, but I definitely, I'm not generally enthused anymore to talk about it, just because it's going in directions that I don't necessarily care for. But we're going to talk about some blockchains in this one. We got a big story from The Atlantic, which has not just, it's more than just talking about Bitcoin and blockchains and all that, because amazingly, this is the first time I've ever really seen in a very mainstream publication. I'm not saying it's the only time. This is just the first time I can really recall, certainly in recent memory or something, where the term, not just anarchist, but anarcho-capitalism was so prominently put on display. I mean, and The Atlantic's a major publication. I mean, that's almost as big as it gets. It's not the biggest, but it's up there. So anyway, to talk about how I'm gonna up the ante on my anarchism, I want to talk about this first real quick. Yeah, folks, if this is your first time listening, or if you're new to the show, I know there's a lot of people that are new to the show. Understand, this is a tech show. We talk science, we talk tech, we get on the bleeding edge of all that. We talk about ethics. You can't talk about ethics without talking about anarchism. And of course, like I say in the intro every week, I'm an anarchist. It can't help but color everything I talk about. Okay. You can't compartmentalize anarchism. You just can't. All right. It's either what you are or you're not. And anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But boy, if you say you're not an anarchist, or you want to take your anarchism perhaps to the next level, well, this is something exciting. So for a few years, and this is even before Sovryn Tech started, this would be back when I used to be on Free Talk Live as well, even though I did Sovryn Tech while I was doing Free Talk Live. But back when I was a co-host with the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, Mark Edge, and whoever else would be on it at various times, really a show that reaches millions of people every month, that being Free Talk Live. I would get the calls, we would get people who call in and say, what do you consider like the best book on human freedom and on anarchism, or, blah, 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 blah. And my answer has been the same for, I guess, well, this would be just about 5-6 years now. I mean, it would have been the same beforehand. This is just, as long as I have been on radio. My answer has always been, as far as like economics, I think the top book out there is Markets Not Capitalism, which is put together by C4SS, Center for a Stateless Society. Just a c4ss.org, just a fantastic resource, incredible website. In fact, they have some pretty exciting things going on right now. And then as far as like anarchism in general, the book I've always recommended is Max Stirner's The Ego in Its Own. Now, there is a new translation, and pretty much this is the newest translation in 100 years. Okay, now there was an edition that came out in the 90s that was by Cambridge University Press, which was a lot more like, it was a more academic text and had, has great footnotes. There's a new edition out. I haven't read it yet, so I'm not going to say that it's the best version out there. Okay, the Cambridge University Press version that came out in the 90s has been the best in my opinion, to date. But even that, while there's some differences in its translation and the footnotes help out a lot, it's still based off of the same translation from way back in 1907. So now there's a completely new translation or English translation, I should say, that there hasn't been in like 100 years. And that is it. Now they gave it a different title, The Unique and Its Property. There's so much to say about the title itself, but I think that's great. I think that's a fine title, and I get it. The ego in its own, may not be the clearest version of that, of that title. So anyway, The Unique and Its Property, it's translated by Wolfie Landstreicher. Hopefully I said that right. But anyway, I recommend checking it out. I put it in the appendix of the show notes. I might leave it in the appendix of the show notes. There, you can get a copy there. And in fact, the link, full disclosure, the link that is in the show notes is actually will take you through the Sex and Science Hour Amazon page, stuff.sexandsciencehour.com, and it'll take you right to where you can buy the book on Amazon. And this just came out. I mean, literally, so let's see, it's June 3rd, 2017. I think it came out like May 24th. I mean, this is so hot off the fucking presses, you can't believe. So yeah, get your copy. And you can get it, you get it from Amazon Prime. It'll show up at your house in a couple days. So mine did. I mean, I just ordered this the other day. Actually, a great Sovryn Tech listener and a Sovryn Tech patron, as a matter of fact, on Patreon. He let me know about it, and I was like, "Yep, ordered." And I ordered it right there. I mean, sight unseen. I was just like, "No, okay, new translation. I'm on top of it," because I'm definitely, egoism, or, egoist anarchism is the way that I identify, as far as anarchism goes. And one could get into the argument on whether or not, would Max Stirner agree even with the term anarchism? Would he just say egoism is really the only term you need? Yeah, sure. I get that. But for clarity, for, the failings, and they are legion, of the English language, I use, egoist anarchist. So anyway, speaking of Sex and Science Hour, oh yes, it'll be back this week. This Friday, coming up, so again, we're on June 3rd here, so whatever Friday happens to be, we will have a new episode of Sex and Science Hour. It is coming back. Woo! The producer of Sovryn Tech, she just gave a wee. Wee! Oh, there she is. Oh, that's so cute. I love you. The lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, of course, she's been on Sovryn Tech the past few weeks, and people have really enjoyed that because that gives everybody, you kind of get the feeling of like you're listening to Sex and Science Hour again for a little while. Because we do Sex and Science Hour in seasons. And so we take season breaks from the show here and there. And, usually we'll do 25 episodes, then we'll take a break, then we do another 25. But we'll be restarting. What is this going to be, season 4? Is that right? It'll be season 4?
Yep, this is going to be season 4.
Season 4. Woo! All right. So season 4 coming up, starting this week. So if you've been waiting for it, we got your hookup. Anyway, so we got a lot to talk about. Like I said, a lot to talk about in this episode. I just wanted to bring both of those points up and draw your attention to, I just like, with the Max Stirner book, okay, with the unique and its property, I think it's so important that, like, I mean, the English language changes, right? It's almost, I don't want to compare it to the Bible because I wouldn't, because Max Stirner would probably have flipped out if someone called his book the Bible or compared it to the Bible. But, the English language changes. I mean, and things need to be refreshed here and there, and it's always good to get kind of new perspectives on things. And in fact, I think there's some real failings in a lot of the, and I'm not the only one that says this, there's some real failings in the English translations that have existed in the past, because again, the ego in its own, or the unique in its property, was originally written, 1844. So, there's a lot of clarity that needs to be had on all of that. But anyway, yeah, I think it's great. And I support people like really any kind of work on, that's covering Max Stirner and is building upon egoist anarchism more. I want to support it straight up. Whether I agree with it 100% or not, I really think that that's an important thing to do, because it's a field of study that nobody's really studying enough. I mean, I don't think they are. They're too busy, fucking around with other versions of anarchism that I think don't go all the way. They don't go far enough. There might be some gold nuggets inside of what those versions of anarchism talk about, but I really don't think they go far enough. And I mean, I'm not necessarily insulting them. I'm just saying. Anyway, so I'm glad that there's this new exploration of this work out there. Okay, I just spent 11 minutes talking about that, and I apologize, because this is a fucking tech show, baby. so let's get into the tech here. So let's get into the Foreplay, where we cover the little stories, the little people, the stories that don't require an entire segment. And I'm going to try this week to get into all of the segments. The past few weeks, there's been so much catch up, and we've done those rare episodes where we do single topic shows. Really been experimenting a lot with different setups for Sovryn Tech itself and seeing what people think about it. And a lot of people really love the episodes where I just run my mouth for 2 hours straight or longer, and nonstop and no stop. And it's like, oh, well, okay. I wouldn't want to listen to me for that long, but if you do, rock and roll. So you're kind of going to get that flavor this week as well. But anyway, so with the Foreplay, open it up, talk a lot about VR. Of course, Computex was this week in Taiwan, which I thought there were a lot of interesting developments that came out of that. Developments that have to do with the PC industry and not mobile. Now, granted, Computex isn't necessarily a mobile show, so, usually you save that for Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. That happens, usually in March, right? So, that's understandable. But it was interesting to see, really, I think, not quantum shifts, but certainly shifts in giant leaps, I think, in the computing industry in general that were announced there. A lot of them coming from Microsoft. Also not a shock, because, most people that have a PC run Windows. Just deal with it, Apple fans, okay? That's how it goes. And Apple, oh, man. I was thinking about it the other day. Was it early April when Apple came out and said, they pretty much apologized, which credit to them for finally coming out and admitting that they fucked up, because they never want to admit when they fuck up, and they fuck up a lot. Credit to them for admitting that they fucked up. They said, it's going to be, we're going to do a refresh. We're going to do an update of the Mac Pro. The Mac Pro is their desktop computer, right? The one that right now looks like a trash can. And actually, I think it's a nice looking machine. I say trash can just because that's the colloquialism for it in the tech world right now. I really thought it was a nice looking machine. It had its flaws because you can't really update it or upgrade it. There's a lot of problems there. And those are the things that Apple was apologizing for. And they said that, yeah, well, we're designing a new one. We're going to have a new design done in 15 months. And I'm just like, I was just thinking about that earlier, during Computex. I'm like, boy, what's going on with Apple? Because there's some huge strides being made here in the PC industry. And I was like, man, they still got 14 months to develop a new desktop. And I was like, when I was 13, I could build a fucking desktop and I could do it in 2 hours. Why the hell does it take 15 months to design a new desktop? The people that want a desktop, they don't care. You don't need to sell them on so much sexy. Okay. Obviously the trash can design didn't work, so just put it in a fucking case. I remember I had, Well, I had all right, here's really what I think they should do. They should go back, Apple should go back to doing the G4 Cube, and now you can do it. You can put a ton of power in a package that small, even though at the time, I've always said this, that was my favorite computer of all time, and it was a desktop, was the G4 Cube. You know, yeah, I mean, that was 15 years ago or however long ago, but that was such a sexy machine. I don't think you can get sexier. Make that little cube again. I know you have the Mac Mini, right? Whatever, just do that. You know, because I think it makes them look even worse that they're saying it takes them 15 months to build a desktop. Man, anybody can make a desktop almost any way they want. They could carve it themselves and all that shit in no time. You know, it's not like really, Apple does not have to develop the parts. Stop. No, they do not have to. You know, if it's going to take them 15 months, this thing better be fucking amazing. I mean, it better be like, it's going to have to look like something we've just never imagined before. That's the only excuse they can come away with, because like I said, you know, a teenager with a fucking head for numbers and an Etch-a-Sketch could come up with a computer in a shorter amount of time than that. And by a long shot, they could come up with one in a day. I think that's so fucking insulting, like beyond insulting in my opinion. So anyway, so Computex was going on this week. And there was those side tirades. Computex is going on. There was a lot of VR stuff there, you know, but before I talk about, you know, what that was, Firefox. So are we in version 52? I think we're in version 52 of Firefox. Mozilla announced that Firefox 55, now like us, all right, let me finish the sentence. I'm terrible about this. Firefox 55 is going to ship with WebVR built into it, and it's going to ship with support for the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift. So, you know, you're going to be able to explore the web in a VR fashion, okay, in a virtual reality fashion with Firefox 55. Now, the point I was going to say is that we've been talking about this. Come 2018, by the end of 2017 is what I should say. Come the end of 2017, Firefox, in my opinion, it's going to be a completely different browser than what you have been using for a decade. It's going to be just like vastly, it's going to be a totally new product. You know, and this speaks for something that's happening, I think, across the board. Like all the companies are totally new companies. I think Mozilla's acting like a new company. That's why they did their big rebrand. We've talked about that. I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm leaving Firefox installed on my machine, even though I don't use it that often. You know, I recommend people use Firefox. Now, on mobile, I use Firefox all the time. Like it's my first piece of software that I install on any mobile device, because I think on mobile, Firefox just kills it. I mean, they you know, because they have the extension platform and all, or, you know, the add-ons platform built into it and everything. You do ad blocking. I mean, it just wrecks, you know, every other app, in my opinion, on mobile. And as I've said, I think that's where Firefox really needs to concentrate. But now I feel a little bit differently, because if they are going to push hard already this year in 2017, and obviously they're getting ready for WindowsMR, right? Windows Mixed Reality, which is going to be, you know, Microsoft's, used to be called Windows Holographic, or Microsoft Holographic, maybe, whatever. It's Windows 10 for, you know, for mixed, for augmented or virtual reality, which is why they call it mixed reality. You know, that's going to be the big push. And if they're getting ready for that, then yeah, okay, Firefox is going to be ready for the future, because I really think that WindowsMR is going to be, you know, this is kind of the future. So, or virtual reality is really, you know, a huge part of the future. So anyway, yeah, now the interesting thing here is that, you know, speaking of ad blocking, this is a story I didn't have listed, but I want to mention it. Apparently Google did confirm that they are going to be putting in an ad blocking abilities into Chrome. But here's the caveat, okay? Yeah, they're doing that, but they're working with all of the advertisers, and they're only, and the statement from Google is that, or from Alphabet/Google, is that Chrome is only going to block the annoying ads. So they're not really doing ad blocking. And they announced this week, what did they call it? It's not Google Contributor. There's another name for it now, but they kind of refreshed. They canceled it in 2016. Google Contributor was this idea that you could pay like $5 a month, and whatever sites worked with Google Contributor, like if you paid the $5, you wouldn't get ads on those websites that worked with Google Contributor, and Google would, you know, pay out that $5, or, you know, parts of that $5 to websites that took part in it, and that were based upon how many visits those websites got a month, right? So they have a new version of Google Contributor out there now. Again, this is all part of that. Really, they're not actually blocking. They're working totally with the advertising industry. This really isn't an ad blocker. So guess what? You're going to want to keep. You're going to want to keep uBlock Origin or whatever your favorite ad blocker is up and running on your web browsers. That's that's just my recommendation, because again, what Google decides is annoying and not. I mean, like these autoplay videos, all this different stuff. I don't know how much they're going to want to interfere with that. So it's sort of depressing because at first I was like, okay, Google is finally realizing, all these ads are really like killing the experience, especially on mobile, which is why I was saying, install Firefox, okay, on a, on your mobile device, because you can actually put uBlock Origin on Firefox there and you can keep all this shit from popping up. And I was like, yeah, maybe they're just finally realizing, oh shit, we got to do something about this. We can't let this ride. But no, that's partly what's going on. But at the same time, I think they're really just trying to kind of force advertisers maybe to do things a little bit differently, that maybe helps out with their bandwidth and doesn't fuck with their, I think Google's, being completely selfish about this. Not that I have a problem with being selfish, but let's just be clear. They're not being altruistic. Okay, which is what I think a lot of people feel was going to happen. It's like, oh, yes, this is so wonderful. Google's going to implement ad blocking. No, they're not. They're not blocking ads. They're just changing the ad game. They're not really blocking them. And I don't think that any of that is actually going to help any further with securing, your web browsing activity and thus your devices and your computers and blah, blah, blah. Because that's what I tell people all the time, because it's like, well, isn't it sort of unethical to ad block, on websites, because that's how these websites make their money. And that's why I don't have to pay for the news that I read, blah, blah, blah. No. Your job. Okay. If there's a duty, if there's a citizen's duty, a civic duty, okay, on the internet, is to secure the shit out of your devices and your PCs and whatever else. That's your one and only concern. Your concern is not how are these websites I visit going to make money. That's their job. That's their concern to have. Okay. Running an ad blocker secures your machine, secures your device, secures your computer. That's what you want to worry about. All right, because none of these news organizations or anything are going to do a goddamn thing about, when something like the WannaCry ransomware goes out there, or we're going to talk later, there's a new one, SambaCry. Nobody's going to do anything about that. What matters is, and I'm not saying ad blocking would have stopped WannaCry, but I'm just saying that, for example, your job is just to secure your shit. That's all you need to worry about. Don't worry about the ethics of how these people get paid. Just don't. So anyway. All right, another side tangent. Damn it. But let's talk about some other stuff that happened at Computex. And then I really do want to get into our main stories here this week. In fact, like I said, we've got a huge one opening it up. So the rest of Computex. All right, come on. Let's get to it. So speaking of WindowsMR, which is kind of how all that started. By the way, Chrome is also going to have Chrome VR, and that is explicitly going to be mobile and desktop, where you're going to have that virtual reality, web browsing experience. I don't know that Firefox 55 on mobile is going to have WebVR built into it, but I think it'd be kind of foolish if it didn't. But I didn't find a clear answer on that. But anyway, how are you actually going to see all this? How are you going to take advantage of WebVR? How are you even, what's the virtual reality internet even going to look like? Well, one of the ways that you would be able to do that would be by putting on a WindowsMR headset. Now, what these are virtual reality headsets, and they are virtual reality. They're not really augmented reality. You can't see, it's not like Google Glass or something where it only, covers like your vision partly. They revealed a bunch at Computex. We finally got some specifications on exactly what are going to make these things up. And you got to look at quite a few. There was the one from Lenovo, which probably looked the best, like as far as overall look. But let's be clear here. Regardless of what these things look like, these are not going to be, as far as an aesthetic, you're not going to make a virtual reality headset look sexy. unless you have like fantasies about them from like the 90s or something, then these might look sexy. But really, there's no way these are going to look sexy. Let's just get over that. These things can look as ridiculous as they want because there's just no hope either way. But that really shouldn't matter because you're in virtual reality and you're not, having to encounter anybody in, real reality and physical reality and IRL. So, it doesn't matter what these things look like, in my opinion. The interesting thing with the WindowsMR headsets is that they are going to have sensors on them that don't require. So, like, what is it? I forget exactly what they call them with the HTC Vive, but they're like beacons that you have to set up in a room. You have to put them in. That way you can interact with the room and you can walk around and all this. As to where, like, with the Oculus Rift, you sort of have to, like, stay in one place. You don't really walk around because the Oculus Rift doesn't have any sensors to give you awareness, spatial awareness within the room that you're, using VR in. It's where the HTC Vive can do that. Also, WindowsMR headsets can do that to a degree, but keep in mind that WindowsMR headsets, virtual reality headsets, they are physically connected. They are tethered, by two wires, to your PC. So, and they'll probably work with the, the Project Scorpio, the new version of the Xbox that Microsoft is going to be announcing, I imagine, at E3 very soon. So, and the connectors there's an HDMI 2.0 connector and a USB 3.0 connector. Now, I think those 2 points are important, okay, because the interesting thing is that Microsoft comes out with, and it's a full-size HDMI 2.0 connector. Now, granted, those two connectors are probably important because those are ports that exist on, every Xbox out there right now. Not even just Project Scorpio, but on Xbox as well. And again, like I said, I think WindowsMR or, this virtual reality setup that you're, what's the word I'm looking for? Platform, I guess. Or I wouldn't call it a protocol, but I guess I'll say platform. Platform that Microsoft's coming out with, it's going to have to be a thing on Xbox as well. It'd be stupid if it didn't. So anyway, with Windows now, the reason I think it's interesting is that, a lot of people were talking about, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago with the Surface laptop, which is the laptop, not the Surface Pro, which that all got announced too. And that's a nice looking machine. There's some interesting things with that, like the fact that the Core i5 version, which is a full Core i5, Kaby Lake, is going to be that it's fanless. I think that's wild that they've gotten the heat issue down that much. But regardless, the Surface laptop, which is a more traditional laptop, a lot of people thought, wow, that's so backwards thinking for it to have a USB 3.0 port when really, shouldn't it, if it's going to be future proof, shouldn't it have USB-C or Thunderbolt 3.0 and all that on it? Like this doesn't make any sense. Well, now I think it makes sense because the Surface laptop, it needed to have the ports, which the Surface Pro doesn't without dongles anyway. Well, it does have the USB 3.0, but I don't think the Surface Pro is the full-size HDMI. It has the Mini. So that's not so bad. But anyway, I think the reason they went with USB 3.0 is because they knew that all of their hardware partners for the WindowsMR headsets were using USB 3.0 as the standard. And so without having to put a bunch of dongles on it, and with Windows 10 right now, this year anyway, of 2017, concentrating so much on creatives. That's why they call it the creator update. And then in fall, what are they calling it? The creative update, I think. Pushing that so hard and pushing really as far as creators go, particularly with virtual reality and augmented reality. I think they wanted, without any dongles, they wanted people to have their premier laptop, that being the Surface laptop, and they wanted you to be able to plug in a WindowsMR headset, from one of their partners, and that it'll work out of the gate. So now I think it makes sense why they didn't use USB-C, because they weren't thinking about the future of hard drives and all these different things that you could connect. They were just thinking, how can we plug in, this mixed reality future that we're pushing towards? And Microsoft really is. We've talked about this for some time now. We talked about this back in October. Okay. And this is how they can do it. And they knew that this was how it's going to be. So again, now I think all of that makes a lot of sense as to what they're doing. And it also makes sense why, because again, the Surface laptops, depending on which version you get, only have Intel graphic chipsets in them. They don't have dedicated GPUs in them. Okay. From like NVIDIA or AMD or something. So that also explains why they push so hard for these virtual reality headsets to work on really low-end hardware. Because again, I think they knew, well, we're going to give people the computer that's relatively inexpensive, that being the Surface laptop. We're going to give them the computer that has all the connectivity and all the proper tools to build in this mixed reality future. So this is suddenly everything Microsoft is doing makes sense just by looking at the WindowsMR headsets, even though they're not themselves, at least yet, making their own virtual reality headset. I mean, they have HoloLens. That's kind of where they're concentrating. That's a whole other ballgame, like that's a whole other thing, but it is, part and parcel of working with all this. So the headset's very, very nice. I sound like a car commercial, but very nicely priced. Okay. they really are. So I think the one from Acer is going to cost $300, and it's coming out in August, which that's early. They're calling them developer editions, which is interesting, but they're coming out. They're coming out in August. And again, these have, it's not like the HTC Vive where I don't think they might not be as powerful as the HTC Vive, certainly. But they don't have to have those beacons or anything. They have the, spatial awareness built right into the headset, which I think is nice. But yeah, only $300 compared to what the Vive or the Oculus Rift costs. I mean, that's cutting the price in half, and again, you could say, well, but they're not as powerful. Yeah, but I bet they're going to get the job done. I bet Star Trek Bridge Crew, which just came out, and oh man, I can't wait. I know some Sovryn Tech listeners are big on VR, and I can't wait to hear a review from them. I'm going to be getting my hands on these headsets, when the time comes. Don't worry. And some of them I think you can even pre-order right now. But anyway, so yeah, the Acer one I think was $300. And the one from HP, I think, was $350, and both of those, I think, are coming out in August. Asus has one coming out. Lenovo has one coming out. I don't know where one would necessarily be better or more powerful than the other. I didn't see anything in the tech specs where one seemed to have some kind of crazy advantage. I mean, maybe some of them will, because, you can't really change resolution so much on these. But regardless, I would expect them all to fit within this price range of $300 to $350, under sub $400, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Because, if it's above $400, you might as well hash out the $500 to get, the Oculus Rift or the Vive or, even PlayStation VR or something like that. They really need to be low priced. So it's the right move. But it is interesting to see. And the fact that they're coming out in August, I think is tremendous, because originally we thought they weren't going to be out till like December. So that's way, way ahead of schedule. So right on. Let's see. Boy, I want to get it. The lead story is so long. I want to be able to get into it right away. But I do want to just share some quick good news. Artem Vaulin, who is the alleged runner of the site that has been down now for some time, even though there's kind of sort of a phoenix that has risen from the ashes of it, of Kick-Ass Torrents, who was in, he is Ukrainian, was in Poland and was arrested there, and he is now out on bail. And he's out on bail in Poland. He did not get extradited. That was a major concern, was that that Artem was going to actually get because the U.S. was the country going after him, not Poland. Poland just did whatever, the U.S. kind of asked them to do, which is problematic in itself. But really glad to hear that he is finally out. There were complaints of medical conditions, or concerns of medical conditions, I should say, while he was locked up, and that's what kept him from getting extradited to the U.S. And now he is out on bail, and so I am so happy, because I was definitely fully on board with free Artem Vaulin, and Sovryn Tech put all of our all the support we could behind what was going on with Artem, and I'm really glad to hear it. So how about some good news, baby? Well, there's been a lot of good news. This has actually been a whole, so far it's been 30 minutes of good news, in my opinion. We got a new translation of Max Stirner's work. Sex and Science Hour is coming back. Firefox 55 is going all VR. We got some awesome VR headsets coming out. How about that, baby? What show do you listen to now that has good news? I got you covered, but don't worry, we'll get into some bad news in a minute. So anyway, but so glad to hear that Artem Vaulin is out, and we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that case. I had somebody ask me this, and I'm going to talk about it a bit openly since we're getting into some blockchain stuff. Some people asked me about Shapeshift's new Prism technology, so Prism is like this investment portfolio that is quote unquote decentralized and is built on top of Ethereum, blah, blah, blah. And people ask me what I thought about it. Well, first off, Shapeshift.io, which is a great way to convert your, various cryptocurrencies into other various cryptocurrencies. Like if you wanted to convert Bitcoin into Zcash, or, whatever you wanted to do, it's a great service. I use it all the time. I really, really think it's handy. I mean, it works for so many different currencies. It supports so many currencies. Now, Prism is, their kind of solution to maybe not so much needing an exchange, where you could hold all of these different currencies, and they're somewhat gamifying even investment portfolios in cryptocurrencies. It's not a terrible idea. Now, I am very anti-Ethereum. I have huge problems with people with projects that use Turing complete languages, programming languages and whatever else, because, really the term should be Turing vulnerable, because that's not secure. There's a reason that, in a lot of computer science, Turing completeness isn't used, because it's in itself, it's almost a security exploit. So yeah, I mean, and I have a bunch of other problems with Ethereum. I've talked about it over the years. I talked about it before Ethereum even got released. I mean, there's a laundry list of problems that I could describe. Another one real quick is that it's very slow. Like, this is not a replacement for servers, and it never will be. It can't. It just straight up can't. Okay. But as far as how this is working with Prism, I mean, the question was, what do I think about Prism, Shapeshift Prism? I get the idea. I think the idea is fine. You have to have an Ethereum wallet for it to work. You have to have an Ethereum address. You have to have some Ether, ETH, or what do they call it? ETH, I think. Amazingly. That's such terrible. Oh, whatever. Anyway, I don't know who their marketing team is. But you have to have all that. Now, granted, Shapeshift.io is an easy way to get Ethereum, right? But yeah, you have to set all that up. But this is something where I'm like, okay, yeah, like Ethereum can work for this, because it's, you're the one doing the holding here. It's not like it's some kind of replacement for some server, some service that belongs on a server. Okay. So yeah, what I see of Prism, okay, that looks nice. I don't like the fact, I wish it wasn't built on top of Ethereum. I think that's, inherently an issue. Like I said, I think there's inherent security issues with that, but for what it is, the abstract of the idea, yeah, nice idea. Again, I really wish they weren't using Ethereum and they built it on top of something else. So whatever. But there you go. If you're wondering about Prism, yeah, I thought that was an interesting announcement. I don't often talk about blockchain technologies and blockchain developments, because when sometimes, I mean, I know the person that asked me about this. In fact, it was Daryl Perry of FPP.cc, who's doing, just tremendous work there. Usually I don't talk about blockchain technologies, because a lot of times if somebody emails me, hey, have you heard about this blockchain technology? Like, often I set it up so that people can contact me anonymously. Okay. And so, it could be somebody from their team who's just looking to get some free advertising by me mentioning their shit, mentioning their kit. Or mentioning their ICO, which I think all ICOs, okay, which is, initial coin offering, right? That's how a lot of these new crypto technology, new blockchain technologies get funded, is they do a pre-sale and all this stuff. I think every single one of those is bullshit. Like the instant there's an ICO, I don't trust it. I mean, it might end up becoming something great, and when it does, I'll talk about it. But initially, I just think ICOs are one of the biggest scams in the world. Just flat out. Ethereum did an ICO themselves, and I said it was a scam. You could say, well, but it's up to, whatever its valuation is right now, and I made a ton of money. Well, great. But that doesn't mean that, I've talked about, oh God. I don't know if I talked about Satan. I don't know if I talked about this on Sovereign Tech Prime, or if I talked about it in a Patreon episode, which if you want to become a patron, sovereigntech.com, just go there. It takes you right to the Patreon page. But understand that Ethereum, it really only has value based upon speculation. It does not have value because it delivers on what it says it can, on its claims of what it was supposed to be able to do. It has yet to deliver on any of that. And no, Prism is not an example where, see, Ethereum works. Not what they were saying it was supposed to do. That's not it. Okay. This is like a use case kind of after the fact, that they found out that it could work for, but it's not what Ethereum was originally supposed to be all about. All right. So understand that Ethereum's still a scam because it's not replacing anybody's servers. It's not. I know you can say, well, Microsoft's working with Ethereum. All these different companies are working with Ethereum. Okay, but it's not out there. It's not implemented yet. And they're finding out test after test. And you can look these up. Now, when I say they, I mean a bunch of different companies are finding out, oh, yeah, but this is nowhere near as fast as using a server. We're not going to go with this. So anyway, yeah, where was I? Yeah, so your ICO with Ethereum, good, you made money off of it. That doesn't mean it's still not a scam. People made money off of the tulips, right? But that was still kind of a, well, what's a scam? What's human nature? That's a whole other, very philosophical conversation. Anyway, so yeah, Prism, yeah, looks, that looks fine and dandy. But yeah, I don't normally talk about these things. And the point I was going to make is that because it's Shapeshift.io, look, they don't need marketing. They don't need, if I mention everybody already knows about Shapeshift.io. All right. I'm not giving them, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's not like something where I'm being used, to talk about this. Like, it's just like when I talk about Google, who the fuck doesn't know about Google, right? So it's not like if I talk about Google, ooh, I'm giving them free marketing. No, it's not marketing. Everybody knows, So that's how I feel about things like Shapeshift or talking about Bitcoin or some of the larger, more interesting, blockchain technologies like Zcash and all that. Everybody already knows, I mean, you can tell in the valuation, or even talking about Ethereum now. Like talking about Ethereum now, why not? Because everybody already knows about it. Who cares? Talk about Litecoin. Everybody already knows about it. You know what I mean? But if it's something new, yeah, I don't talk about it because I don't want to give them the press, the undue press, unless they want to pay me. If you want to buy an advertising package, I sell them. I have lots of advertisers, rock and roll. Hey, maybe, you got to go through my litmus test, but you could do that. Anyway, boy, I wanted to talk about Intel's Core i9. They announced that. And then what was it? Threadripper that AMD announced, just crazy. All I'm going to say is this for right now, because I really need to see some of these products really in action. But like we are heading into, as far as processors go, we are heading into some very wild and interesting times. I mean, like the Core i9, the high-end version of it, what are they calling it? Coffee Lake, that's pretty cool. I mean, what did they say? It was going to have 18 cores? Just like these crazy numbers. We used to theorize about this like years ago when I was working at, certain tech companies. We used to talk about these things, and like we said, what if there was what happens when we get to like 20 core processors, right? Because at the time the hot thing was the FX chips from AMD that were dual core and all this, and and that's when Intel as well was also starting to experimenting with hyperthreading and everything. And we were talking about, it's like, what if you had hyperthreading? What if you did and then you had like 20 cores, and we called them planet killers. We were like, it's like that's what we'd say. It's like, yeah, that would be the planet killer. And wow, are we heading towards that? I mean, if Intel actually delivers on what they're talking about with the Core i9 and having all of those cores and a lot of the speeds were, I think they're maxing out at like 4.2 gigahertz, which they're finally breaking their 4 gigahertz rule. The exciting thing here with the Core i9 announcement, okay, without talking about all the technicals on it and everything. And AMD's got great stuff going on too. Threadripper, the processor from AMD, the new Ryzen Threadripper is literally, I mean, it is huge. It is one of the largest processors I've ever seen. It's a monster. The interesting thing with all of that is really that this is no longer, these aren't incremental steps. These are, for lack of a better term, quantum leaps in processor technology. They're not quantum processors, but they're quantum leaps, and wow, it's about time, because that's been like a kind of a conspiracy theory in the tech world, is that all of these processor companies have really been holding back releasing what they can really do, with these processors, for decades at least. And well, now it looks like maybe if that was really happening, the ban on pushing what you can really do with processors would appear to have been lifted. What do they know? Is there something new coming out that they feel like, oh shit, we can't just do this incremental release anymore? Maybe, or maybe, Intel was just that scared of what Ryzen was doing, or maybe there's the concern over the, what's happening with, Windows is coming to ARM, right? To ARM processors. Maybe they're concerned that, well, we've really got to show people why you don't want to invest in ARM. And so we're going to come out with processors that, well, like my buddies and I used to call, that could be planet killers. That could crush anything you threw at them. Ooh. So I'll be keeping an eye on this, but again, really right now, it's just announcements. No one's really seeing any numbers so much out of it, or, real world tests out of it. And when those real world tests come out, then we'll really break into, hey, is this yay or nay? Do we really invest in this? Is this worth building a whole new computer over? And maybe this is something, we talked earlier, okay, about how Apple said it's going to take 15 months. If they come out and say it took us 15 months because we were waiting for the Core i9, or we were waiting for like the AMD's Ryzen Threadripper processor or something, I will take back what I said about insulting them for it taking them so long to build that desktop. If that's what they're waiting for, fine. But boy, in fact, honestly, it'd be twice as bad of everything that I described earlier in the show if they don't put in either one of these chips, either Ryzen or Coffee Lake from Intel, the i9. It's all bullshit if they don't, in my opinion. They'll be way too far behind. So, all right. I think I had one more story that had to do about the AlphaGo thing. So, all right. Yeah, I'll just mention it quick. Okay. So AlphaGo did a 3 series of the game Go. Okay, which if you don't know the game Go, I'm just going to ask you, please look it up on Wikipedia. All right, this is a very complex game. This is not chess. This is something that, some people see it as one of the holy grails of kind of game theory. And so Alphabet/Google making a quote unquote artificial intelligence, and I put that in quotes, okay, that can beat humans at Go is seen as kind of a holy grail because Go requires so much sort of abstract thought, really to win at it. And AlphaGo, which is their AI that plays Go, beat Kijay. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Beat him 3-0. Okay, now, he's just a 19-year-old, but he's considered the best in the world. And AlphaGo had already beaten champions in Korea, in South Korea, and, now beat the champions in China. I just want to make this statement really fast, okay? I understand the complexities, the abstractness, kind of what it takes to play Go. I've played Go. In fact, a lot of people don't, I heard about Go so long ago because I remember Nolan Bushnell talking about where he got the name for his company, that being Atari, right? Remember Atari? Atari is a phrase from the game Go. And so when I first heard that, I was like, oh, I got to play Go. And so I am no good at it, but I've played Go. I get it. I understand. All right. But let's be really clear here. Regardless of what you think, AlphaGo is just machine learning really good at playing Go. It is not a leap. It is not an advancement in artificial intelligence. It is not bringing on Skynet. It is not anything like that. All that this is a program good at the game of Go. No, I don't care how abstract the game of Go is. None of that matters. It is purpose built to do one thing. It is not going to get added in and somehow teach the rest of the machine learning out there. And suddenly, we're going to have an AGI, an artificial general intelligence. We're going to have Skynet or whatever the fuck you're looking for. No, this is just something good at Go. That's it. That's the end of the story. There's no story to be told. Everybody was making it like, it can think like a human. No, it can't. All right. It just can't. Even like with chess. So everybody talked about these AIs that were really good at chess, and they beat, humans at chess. Kasparov got beat in the 90s, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Honestly, even the human players have figured out how the quote unquote AIs are playing chess. And now it's not such a, humans can figure this shit out. And I think it's interesting that now human players are actually able to best the AIs at chess. It's not like across the board that human players are beating the AI, but now it's also not like what it appeared to be in the 90s where, oh no, the AIs figured out everything to do about chess. No human could ever beat them. That's not true anymore. So, again, this really, all you're creating are, programs that are good at, say, one thing, and putting them all together. I don't think that equates to creating an AGI. which is this, again, kind of the fears of, or, this is like the singularity or something like that. At some point, I'm going to talk about, we need to have another conversation about AI. Maybe that'll be next week. In fact, a great Sovryn Tech listener brought up an interesting little theory that's out there that I'll get into. Like I said, I'll get into that next week. I was tempted to talk about it this week, but we'll save it because we got a more interesting story to get into. And let's get into that story finally. Woo! Let's get into the story of the week. But before I do, let's talk about, if you want to have a good time, we're talking about good news. One of the things that I really find myself, this is an ad, by the way, folks. One of the things I really find myself, these days with so much depressing shit going on, I find myself listening to a lot of podcasts that aren't necessarily news, aren't current events, and that more have to do with, entertainment, stuff that's fun, stuff that everybody can kind of get together on. And I've said this before, one of the subjects that I listen to a lot of podcasts on about is Star Wars. Straight up. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Okay. And in my opinion, right now, one of the best Star Wars podcasts going is Resist the Empire podcast. All you got to go to is resisttheempirepodcast.com. This is a Star Wars podcast with that liberty-oriented perspective that I just love. That, like I said earlier, just colors everything I do. And it's so beautiful to see it coloring Star Wars, the Star Wars universe. But you get the latest news. They do breakdowns on all the characters. It's such a fun show. Breakdowns on the characters is then they do this really cool thing where it's called the galaxy's smallest political quiz. And they kind of they figure out, okay, what ideology is Lando Calrissian? What ideology is Thrawn or something like that, right? Like they pick a character each episode, and it's a lot of fun. Awesome production. I mean, I just think it's such a cool podcast. And again, I love knowing that kind of the way that I see the world, the way that I see everything, gets brought into the Star Wars universe. With the Resist the Empire podcast. So check them out, resisttheempirepodcast.com. I cannot thank them enough for being a supporter and a sponsor of Sovryn Tech. And I mean, you can let them know that you heard about it from the Golden Stallion because they listen to this show. So, they know the deal, and they knew that my listeners, there's a lot of cross-pollination here because Sovryn Tech fans often enough are Star Wars fans. So jump on board with this. I mean, I listen to every episode. There are a few episodes in now. It is so much fun. Like I said, the production values are fantastic. You don't have to worry about that. A lot of people are like, yeah, but I don't want to listen to somebody who's recording on their iPhone. No. These guys, they deliver the fucking goods. Okay. With all, Pax Libertas Productions. That's the name of the production house that does it. I mean, just top fucking notch material that they put out there. They also do the Lava Flow podcast, etc. Go check them out. ResistTheEmpirePodcast.com. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. I mean, I guarantee that. All right. It is an awesome show. If you're a Star Wars fan and you love human freedom, this is your hookup. I couldn't do it better. I mean that. I couldn't do it better. Just fantastic stuff. So, all right. Now, let us finally really get into our lead story. And in case you were wondering, oh yeah, we're going to do a movie review at the end of this one, baby. And we're doing Wonder Woman. Oh, just wait for that. Now, our lead story, this one's got some length. I got to admit, but I want to break this down because this is where I think anarchism starts to really meet the mainstream, and it's meeting the mainstream through technology, which is why that's why I thought a few years ago with Sovryn Tech, it was so important for there to be an anarchist tech show. Because I knew that a lot of the tech that's being developed, you think about Signal, okay, you think about RetroShare, a bunch of these different technologies that take centralized power away, from a lot of the tech giants and maybe even from governments themselves, and then you think Bitcoin and things like this. I knew that this is the direction things were going, and sooner or later, the news is, the media is going to get on top of this stuff, and they're going to start either, praising or maybe vilifying, what's going on here. Now, this article that I'm about to read from The Atlantic, okay, here's the title. Cryptocurrency might be a path to authoritarianism. And I'll read the byline, the subheader here. Extreme libertarians built blockchain to decentralized government and corporate power. it could consolidate their control instead. Now, boy, I mean, just the massive conversation that could be had around just that subheader. But I'll save it. Okay. But this is an article where I do not 100% agree with it, but there are a lot of points in it that I kind of do. That I want to cover. I want to talk about it. I heard from Sovryn Tech listeners. They said, hey, did you see this? I mean, I had a bunch of people email me the story saying, you need to talk about this because a lot of this is stuff you'd been saying for years. And I agree. And other people, people that I have, just tremendous respect for what they think. They said that there was a lot of good points in this. I agree with them. So let's break into this story. Like I said, it's got some length. I'm going to stop at various points to talk about whatever it's breaking down. But I think this is an important story to cover because this is one of the first stories, in my opinion, where technology and anarchism, or what some people want to call like crypto anarchism, blah, 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 have really come, they've come together and they've coalesced at a major news publication, that being The Atlantic. So, all right. Here we go. This is from May 30th. So just a few days ago, 2017. All over the town, the parking meters are disappearing. Drivers now pay at a central machine or with an app. It's so convenient, I sometimes forget to pay entirely and then suffer the much higher price of a parking ticket. The last time that happened, I wondered, why can't my car pay for its own parking automatically? It's technically possible. Both my car and my smartphone know my location via GPS. My phone already couples to my car via Bluetooth. An app could prompt me to pay for parking upon arrival. Or imagine this. My car, which is already mostly a computer, enters... Oh, boy, there's a... Stanley breaking in. There's a fucking great statement. Yes, it is. I've been saying that forever. That cars are fucking computers now. They're not even cars. Reading on. Enters an agreement, and I say that with derision. I don't say that as a compliment. Enters an agreement. So the car enters an agreement to lease time from a parking lot, which is managed by another computer. It, quote unquote, signs this contract just by entering the lot. Oh, contracts. Woo! By entering the lot and occupying a parking space. In exchange, the car transfers a small amount of Bitcoin, the currency of choice for computers, into the parking lot's wallet. With computers handling the entire process, I'd never even be able to forget to pay for parking. The only way to fail would be for my car to run out of Bitcoin, in which case the parking lot has easy recourse. Because my car's ignition is managed by a computer, woo! Concentrate on that sentence. The parking lot could just shut my vehicle down. Until, effectively, it would shut it down until you could, pay for it, right? Anyway, reading on, scenarios like this are possible when blockchain, the digital transaction record originally invented to validate Bitcoin transactions, gets used for purposes beyond payment. In certain circles, the technology has been hailed for its potential to usher in a new era of services that are less reliant on intermediaries like business and nation states. But its boosters often overlook that the opposite is equally possible. Blockchain could further consolidate the centralized power of corporations and governments instead. Ooh, okay. 2 points I want to bring up. One is that Toyota is supposedly experimenting with implementing Ethereum into their cars to do a lot of this very stuff that's being described. Okay, so this isn't theory. What this whole parking lot scenario that was laid out, this isn't theory. This is something that's really happening. And Toyota, which is a very forward-thinking car company, a car company I generally appreciate. They're on top of this. Now, I don't agree with, just like with Prism, I don't agree with them using Ethereum. Okay, I think that's a mistake. That's a security problem waiting to happen. But I get it. Okay, and I mean, and it proves the point that this isn't just some kind of like wild scenario this guy's laying out. It's going to happen. Now, I do want to bring up the point because other people have talked about this. Like, how could we implement Bitcoin into cars or something like this? What if you're like you made you're on a lease, or if you're making monthly payments on a car and you don't make your monthly payment, and the payment maybe goes through Bitcoin or something. Again, your car could just get shut down. This is already kind of happening without blockchain technology, but blockchain technology, might be able to bring it a little more to the fore and tie in the money more directly with it. Anyway, but the other sentence, the other point I want to bring up, blockchain could further consolidate the centralized power of corporations and governments instead. This is what I have called the tyranny of the code. I've talked about this years ago. I had conversations about this at blockchain events, at conferences where I was asked to be a speaker. Again, I was asked, and they said, talk about whatever you want to talk about. So I fucking talked about this. And I said, you've got a problem, and it's called the tyranny of the code. In fact, I think I have the video up on my YouTube channel. You can just look up Brian Sovryn on YouTube, and you'll get to my YouTube channel where I gave a talk, I think it was Coins in the Kingdom. And very gracious of the organizers there they gave me extra time. They said, no, let him talk, let him go. He can go long, let him say whatever he's got to say. And I'm honored by that. And actually in the Sovryn Tech feed, if you have the podcast feed, it's a couple of years ago, at least. But there are, my talk is available in the public Sovryn Tech feed. So you can also find it there if you just want to listen to the audio version. I actually think it's better in audio than watching the video because, well, anyway. So not a new idea for me. Like what this guy's saying, look, I've already been, his general premise, it would appear, I've kind of been on top of. Okay, is that, yes, it could. And in fact, you have the companies that want to work, you have blockchain companies that want to work with governments that are all about trying to, further or maybe even make government more efficient. That should be a terrifying thought to people, but people do that. Some of these companies, really want to get on board with this. I keep forgetting the name of the one. It begins with an F, not Vermont. Factum. That's the one I was thinking of. Factum, where they explicitly want to work with governments. I mean, like crazy shit. So, and that sort of initially disproves part of this guy's premise, because we only had, we've got the initial abstract here of that blockchains could, enhance corporation and governmental control. But he's kind of saying that extreme libertarians are going to take over if they do this. Well, not really. If blockchains are just trying to enhance governments, that's really not appealing to extreme libertarianism, right? Anyway, let's read on some more. Like I said, there's so much to get into with this. In his book, Radical Technologies, the urban designer Adam Greenfield calls cryptocurrency and blockchain the first technology that's, quote, just fundamentally difficult for otherwise intelligent and highly capable people to understand, end quote. Or let me read a little more. I was relieved when I read this because I have been pretending to understand cryptocurrencies, digital money based in code breaking, for years. Bitcoin is hard to grasp because it's almost like a technology from an alien civilization. It's not just another platform or app. Making sense of it first requires deciphering the political assumptions that inspire it. Okay. Before that last sentence about political assumptions, I don't understand. What the fuck's so hard about this? Like, I mean, that actually speaks against this writer in the first place. And I don't know if Adam Greenfield's all about radical technologies. Now, I never read the book. I don't know what Adam Greenfield's background is. But really, Bitcoin is not hard to understand. Blockchain is not hard to understand at all. Okay. I mean, getting into the deep technicals of it. Yeah, sure. Okay, fine. Like maybe, maybe you're not going to understand like how you program all of that. You're not going to have the programming language down or something, but like grasping the three generals problem and stuff like this shit's not hard. I'm saying, believe me, I've talked to people who are not tech savvy at all. They really do get it. Like you can ask them, explain blockchain technology to me, and they do it. Right. So, even like a hash, like, okay, just explain to somebody what a hash is. And then suddenly, oh, I get it. So that's kind of crazy. But now the last sentence there, making sense of it first requires deciphering the political assumptions that inspire it. Now, making sense of why it was created requires an understanding of the political assumptions. And I actually appreciate that somebody is finally saying, no, Bitcoin was a very political technology, because a lot of people don't want, and that includes Gavin Andreessen, who was, head of development for so long of Bitcoin, don't want it to be a political technology. But it was devised that way, at first. So I certainly agree with that sentiment from this author, or from this, reporter, writer, whatever. Reading on, Bitcoin is an expression of extreme technological libertarianism. This school of thought goes by many names. Anarcho-capitalism, or ANCAP for short. Wow, I mean, this guy's in deep. If he knows to call it ANCAP. In fact, I mean, most people that are really into anarchism, they just call it ANCAPism now. But woo. And usually if somebody says ANCAPism, often enough, they're probably being, derogatory towards it. But anyway, I'm amazed. this is the part that when I was reading this article and I saw that, because I got this article, I think I got in one of my pocket emails or something initially. And then, of course, a lot of people sent it my way. So that's why I'm talking about it. But when I first saw the guy mentioning anarcho-capitalism, I was like, oh, you might have some understanding of what libertarianism actually is. So anyway, anarcho-capitalism, let's read on. So this technological libertarianism goes by many names: anarcho-capitalism, or ANCAP for short, libertarian anarchy, or market anarchism. Central to the philosophy is the distrust of states in favor of individuals. Its adherents believe society best facilitates individual will in a free market economy driven by individual property owners, not governments or corporations, engaging in free trade of that private property. Now, I mean, I could get really technical and say, well, ANCAPism and market anarchism are not the same thing. Like, people that use those two different terms usually come from a couple different perspectives. Okay. And for a lot of people, anarcho-capitalism or ANCAPism is more of a right-leaning ideology, as where market anarchism maybe would be more of a left-leaning or social ideology. So, but whatever. Like, I'm just amazed that even the term market anarchism is in The Atlantic. That's remarkable to me. And the description he gave is fair. This is all about, well, we need to think about the individual straight up. And the best way to facilitate the individual is for a free market economy that, allows for free trade. Okay. I'll take that for what it is. I'm not going to get into a bunch of caveats here. So reading on, anarcho-capitalism is far more extreme than Silicon Valley's usual brand of technological individualism. Stanley breaking it again. We will get through this whole article, I promise. But yes, finally, somebody says it, because so many people say that, in Silicon Valley, it's a bunch of libertarians out there. Those motherfuckers aren't libertarians. Or at least they're not about the individual. They're not like at the extreme level of where the individual is the measure of all things, right? Like Max Stirner would say. They're not fucking libertarians. These guys don't mind working with the state. Are you fucking kidding me? Google, they bend over and grab the goddamn ankles whenever, the government walks in. Please. But that's good. So this guy's, he's not 2 for 2, but he's doing all right. I'm just glad somebody out there is saying, no, don't think libertarianism is like what you see in Silicon Valley. It's not. And that's absolutely true. It's not. For one, the tech sector's libertarian, reading on here, for one, the tech sector's libertarianism is corporatist in its bent. Yes. Woo, there it is. Cybertech's been saying that for 5 years. What took you so long, Atlantic? Whatever. I'm glad you said it. And amenable to government. Woo, there it is again. If in a strongly reduced capacity. Fair enough. And Silicon Valley takes a broader approach to the liberating capacity of technology. Facebook hopes to connect people, Google to make information more accessible, Uber to improve transit, and so on. The ANCAP worldview only supports sovereign individuals engaging in free market exchange. Neither states nor corporations are acceptable intermediaries. That leaves a sparsely set table. At it, individuals, the property they own, the contracts into which they enter to exchange that property, woo, contracts, and a market to facilitate that exchange. All that's missing is a means to process exchanges in that market. Now, I want to stop there for a second. Okay. A very clear point to bring up is that even within anarcho-capitalism, which I don't identify as at all, okay, there are a lot of differing ideas, and many of them have no problem with the abstract notion of corporations. Now, they don't want corporations, corporation is a legal entity recognized by the state. They don't want that sort of thing. Okay, but the idea of a gigantic business that, maybe everybody could kind of live under. Oh, yeah. Go to the Mises. No, don't go to the Mises Institute, but you could go to the Mises Institute, and you will find some people theorizing that actually big business would be a huge part of a free market economy. I completely disagree with that, but let's be clear here that a lot of anarcho-capitalists don't have a problem with the existence of Google. They don't have a problem with the existence of Facebook, blah, blah, blah. So understand you're going to find both sides on that. I definitely lean on the side that, no, you're not going to have gigantic companies because, little companies that aren't, that don't have any regulations in their way or any legal issues in their way would wipe the floor with large companies, just by their very nature. So anyway, regardless, just want to make that clear here. Reading on, ordinarily, money would be sufficient, for this free market transaction. But currency troubles market anarchists. The central banks that control the money supply are entities of the state. Financial payment networks like Visa or corporations which aren't much better. Saying Visa are corporations, which aren't much better. That's where Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies enter the picture. They attempt to provide a technological alternative to currency and banking that would avoid tainting the pure individualism of the ANCAP ideal. This makes Bitcoin's design different from other technology-facilitated payment systems like PayPal or Apple Pay. Those services just provide a more convenient computer interface to bank accounts and payment cards. For anarcho-capitalism to work in earnest, it would need to divorce transactions entirely from the traditional monetary system and the organizations that run it. Central banks and corporations could interfere with transactions, and yet if individuals alone maintain currency records, money could be used fraudulently or fabricated from thin air. To solve these problems, Bitcoin is backed by mathematics instead of state governments. The Bitcoin blockchain is a shared digital record of all the transactions or blocks that have ever been exchanged. Every transaction contains a cryptographic record of the previous succession of exchanges. Each one can thus be mathematically verified to be valid. The community of Bitcoin users does the work of verification. To incentivize the onerous work of cryptographically verifying each transaction in the chain that precedes it, the protocol awards a bounty, in Bitcoin of course, to the first user to validate a new transaction on the network. This is describing mining. This is the process known as mining, a confusing and aspirational name for what amounts to computational accounting. There's a lot more detail that I am omitting, but the key to Bitcoin is that the network distributes copies of one record of all Bitcoin transactions against which individuals verify new exchanges. This record is the blockchain, which is sometimes also called the distributed ledger, a much more elucidating name. This is the missing element that's supposed to allow the hypothetical anarcho-capitalist tech utopia to flourish. At least that's the theory. In practice, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies don't really meet the ANCAP ideal. Perhaps it's an impossible goal. Imagining the end of both nation states and corporations is even harder than imagining the end of capitalism itself. Now, here's one problem with this article is the author never actually describes never defines what he thinks capitalism is. He does a good job of defining a whole bunch of terms, but never really says what he means by capitalism. Not really. He describes anarcho-capitalism, but he doesn't describe what he thinks kind of capitalism is. Anyway, let's read on. Greenfield speculates in this book that Bitcoin was never meant to be a store of value like state-backed currency, but only a medium for exchange, quote, between parties who would presumably continue to hold the bulk of their assets in some other currency, end quote. All right, let me stop there for a second. That is absolute bullshit. That is pure bullshit. You can read the white paper, you can read a bunch of stuff from Satoshi Nakamoto, who created Bitcoin, and you will see that Satoshi Nakamoto, she was really, she was very clear that no, this is money. This is something you are going to own. This is not just the medium of exchange. My favorite way to describe Bitcoin, personally, is it's PayPal and the dollar wrapped into one. It's the transmitter and the money itself at the same time. Okay. I agree with Greenfield that this is how it's being used now. Okay. That it is being used just as a money transmitter, but no, I personally, I think that really, or not personally, I know you can read it, that it was designed to be money and the transmitter at the same time. That was what was so revolutionary about the idea in many ways. So anyway, that's bullshit. Greenfield's off base. Reading on, anarcho-capitalism might seem fringe and unfamiliar to most people, but at least it helps explain the rationale behind cryptocurrency and blockchain. Unfortunately, those topics become even more confusing when Bitcoin and its kin get used in ways incompatible with their original inspiration, which turns out to be most of the time. Stallion breaking in again. Yes, I agree that most of the time it doesn't, a lot of these blockchains, I do not see them being used to further the cause of the individual. I see them just trying to be, a lot of them go in the directions of really centralization. I think even Ethereum does that. We could go down the list of companies, of blockchain companies that are coming out, and that would be the kin that the author's talking about. That again, they are all about working with governments, or Bitcoin being used for banks and or being used by banks and, interacting with banks, blah, 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 or, all of this. Like, yeah, a lot of times it seems like most of these blockchain technologies just end up more supporting the status quo than really getting rid of it, than really, evolving beyond it. So I'm not so much against what the person's saying there. Let's read on. As a medium for exchange, the Bitcoin is relatively limited. Some retailers, many tech-oriented, accept the currency for purchases, but it remains best known as a means to buy black market goods on darknet exchanges like Silk Road. The fact that such uses were illicit in the first place, the anarcho-capitalist would point out, is precisely the reason individual freedom fighters should demand a decentralized market unbeholden to governments. Fair enough. But Bitcoin's success has accidentally undermined its viability. Each Bitcoin transaction adds more encrypted data to the blockchain, requiring increasingly more computer power to verify and to earn the associated commission. More computing power means more energy costs to run and cool the machines, which requires more capital and physical infrastructure to support. Those rising costs inspire centralization. Adam Greenfield tells me that two Chinese giants can control over half of the global Bitcoin mining operations. If they collaborate, a majority control of the blockchain could allow them to manipulate it. That's precisely the risk a decentralized currency was meant to avoid. More often, Bitcoin has been used as a financial instrument instead of a currency. From tulips to tech startups, market capitalism is flexible enough to turn anything into a tradable security, a futures commodity. Bitcoin hype that's a really unfair comparison, but let's move on. Bitcoin hype has made it appealing for speculators certain to transfer their gains back into more stable state currencies, although its volatility makes it a difficult case either as a store of value or a medium of exchange. Okay, I'm going to stop right there for a second. So let's be clear here that yes, there is the problem of centralization. I mean, there's a reason there's a gigantic Bitcoin civil war going on right now, a lot of which I've commented on in recent Patreon episodes. I'm just going to say this, that yeah, I mean, Satoshi made it very clear. Remember when WikiLeaks was saying, oh, we're going to start accepting Bitcoin, and Satoshi, the community, whatever, was saying, no, don't do it. It's too soon. It's too soon. The technology's not ready for this kind of, for this kind of growth. And that seems to be, to me, and I've talked about this in the past, that a lot of other technologies, not blockchain, not Bitcoin, but internet speeds, hard drive capacities, which have gone in reverse. You can buy 8 terabyte hard drives, but they're not commonplace and put in there by manufacturers of, of PCs. I think there was a lot of directions that Satoshi was expecting things to go. Faster internet speeds, especially if she was Japanese, in Japan, 3 gigabit internet and really crazy speeds are not uncommon. To where a blockchain wouldn't really, the blockchain, even at a crazy size, wouldn't be so much of an issue. And at the time, again, we're talking 2009, 2010, this time frame. You were expecting, 1 terabyte hard drives are coming to the thing, 2 terabyte hard drives were becoming a thing, and the sales for them were doing great. You'd be expecting, hard drive space for, huge, for everybody to run the blockchain, for it to not be a problem. Also, you have the issue of Satoshi didn't plan on ASICs being a thing, right? That mining was supposed to be by the CPU. That wasn't expected to kind of break. So there's a lot of areas where technology outside of Bitcoin and even developments within Bitcoin, like say ASICs and all stuff, were not planned on. And that's really what allows for kind of this problem of, where, a couple of companies in China could have, a very terrifying control over the Bitcoin network. But that wasn't by design. Okay. In fact, it was designed for quite the opposite and expected, I think, a lot of different trends in the tech world in general to where that couldn't have happened. But it is happening. I'll fess up to that. I'll admit that. Not that I haven't talked about this years ago, but just making the point now. Let's read on here. So the same hype driving cryptocurrency speculation has also attracted banks, governments, and corporations, exactly the authorities it was designed to circumvent. Financial services firms have taken an interest in cryptocurrency. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen has called for the Fed to leverage blockchain. Canada has been experimenting with the blockchain-backed version of its national currency called CAD coin, CAD coin. Future cryptocurrencies operated by banks or governments might enjoy more productive use than Bitcoin, but those futures also undermine cryptocurrency's ANCAP aspirations. Corporations and governments re-centralize control for one, but also they undermine the discretion and anonymity that accompanies free trade in the ANCAP fantasy. When the local or central bank manages the cryptocurrency platform, it also gets a record of every transaction that takes place in that economy. One doesn't need to be an anarchist to surmise potential downsides of that situation. Picture China mandating state cryptocurrency, tying the country's proposed social credit system to that ledger. Or imagine if the North Carolina state legislature decided to issue all food stamp vouchers in crypto form to better manage their future use. Right. This is one of the things that I have talked about for so long in the cryptocurrency, in the blockchain space. Do not implement ID systems in that. Just don't fucking do it. Yeah, you want to figure out how to solve default risk, right? Meaning, claim of ownership, say over whatever a coin represents, or, the amount that a coin represents or something, right? Or, that a cryptocurrency, represents or is designed for. You don't have to tie that to an individual's like identity. You don't have to tie that to their name, their age, their social security number, any of that horse shit. Anytime a company is interested in ID, just put up like look at them like it's a vampire coming towards you, and put up your fingers in the cross shape and go, because that is so going to create the centralized control. So I think that's a salient point that the author's bringing up here. And maybe we'll talk about that more in a minute. Let's read on some more. Even if Bitcoin's utility and value might decline, the distributed ledger offers potential uses beyond simple currency exchange. In theory, any internet-connected device could participate in verified distributed transactions. Greenfield offers a simple example. The German startup Slockit, which, quote, gives connected objects an identity, the ability to receive payments, enter into complex agreements, and transact without intermediary, end quote. The simplest Slockit device is a physical padlock that is connected to the internet. Networked locks are nothing new, thanks to IoT, which, we don't like IoT on Sovryn Tech, but a blockchain-backed connected lock offers some additional capabilities. A distributed ledger lock could enter into a quote-unquote smart contract, contracts, an agreement whose terms are implemented directly in code. If attached to an Airbnb rental, such a lock could be programmed to automatically release when a smartphone belonging to a prepaid renter approaches. Likewise, it could be programmed to cease to unlatch after that tenant's contract had terminated. Or perhaps it could cut off the power or internet service if a sensor inside the property undermined or determined that its occupants were cavorting too loudly or rifling through unauthorized cabinets. Ooh, yes. Okay, so the example with like the lock, okay? Again, this is the thing. You don't have to tie, all you need is like a code from a company that would work with that lock. You don't need, a company like Slockit doesn't need to, or slock.it, whatever they want to call it, does not need to know your name, does not need to know your social security number, does not need to know much of anything. Okay. All you need is, just verify that you paid for an Airbnb. There might be a number attached to that, but that's all that's fucking needed. You don't need a bunch of identifying information. But the fact is that a lot of these companies do want all of that identifying information. Why do they want it? Is it because they wanted to give it to governments or something like this, or the government is coercing them into collecting it? Yeah, maybe that's part of it. Another part of it is so they can sell it off to advertisers in case their company ever goes belly up. It's kind of an insurance policy for a lot of companies, and that's why they collect data. Again, fortunately, Silicon Valley, we've talked about this on Sovryn Tech in the past, Silicon Valley seems to be starting to look at what they call data minimization, meaning, or particularly user data minimization, because you become on the hook, okay, for collecting all of that data, about your users. And so you actually, and on the hook, meaning like they, you could get sued, there could be insurance claims against a company and all that, and it could, just wipe a company out if one person's, user data gets leaked or used against them somehow. So you don't want to collect all of this information, but for some reason, a lot of these companies still do. Anyway, reading on, Kik, K-I-K, a startup that makes a messaging app popular among teens, offers a more recent example of distributed ledger tech in action. The company recently announced plans to introduce its own cryptocurrency called Kin. Kik will automatically dole out Kin as rewards for developers who build apps on its platform, like stickers or chatbots. let's see. Yeah, Kix CEO Ted Livingston presented the move as nothing short of emancipation from the oppression of ad-driven content platforms like Facebook and YouTube. Quote, a cryptocurrency for an open future, end quote. Kin has built atop a platform called Ethereum, which is based on the same distributed ledger as Bitcoin, but Ethereum uses that technology to express a different aspect of the ANCAP model. Contracts. Sorry, I'll stop doing that. For libertarians, contracts exist to facilitate market exchange. So smart contracts are always backed by currency, Ether in Ethereum's case. If Bitcoin is digital money for people, Ether is digital money for computers. It decides how to spend itself via software automation. Why tout a private, decentralized, distributed ledger currency as an agent of liberation when it amounts to a complicated, software-backed company town store? One answer, it could give the workers a stake in the company store. In the world of cryptocurrency, this is known as an ICO, or initial coin offering. ICOs incentivize the use of an unproven platform like Kix by distributing an initial batch of cryptocurrency to early adopters. In theory, the value will increase if the platform becomes popular, creating a valuable base investment for its initial users. I already talked earlier about ICOs and how they're bullshit. Let me read on with this. In the extremist libertarian aspiration, smart contracts would allow anonymous actors to trade anything whatsoever in an untraceable way via unregulatable markets. Instead, actual smart contracts, ICOs, and distributed ledger-backed devices mostly offer new ways to interface with the private technology industry. For example, in Brooklyn, a solar microgrid startup called Transactive sells clean energy to a community via Ethereum. And Toyota just announced a partnership with MIT to develop distributed ledger-based infrastructure for future autonomous vehicle services. We talked about that earlier. On that front, the anarcho-libertarians share something in common with the plain vanilla technical-libertarians, a belief in the wisdom and righteousness of a fully computational universe. My hypothetical smart contract parking meter, Toyota's future blockchain-backed rideshare system, Slocket's blockchain lock, Kix Kin, Transactive solar grid, all are just technology companies enjoying the capitalization and publicity spoils of the latest hot trend. They might become more than that, of course, but in order to do so, something terrifying has to happen first. Now, I kind of want to talk about smart contracts or contracts in general out of the gate. The one thing I'm going to say here, I want to read on more because we've got a ton. There's a little bit more to this story, and we're running very short on time. But I want to talk about this real quick. And I've talked about it years ago on Sovryn Tech. Here's the problem with contracts. Here's the problem with smart contracts. Here's the problem with basing transactions on a blockchain. Okay. It's very simple. People have to, this goes beyond blockchain. Okay. This issue with contracts goes well beyond that. It requires people to agree to, like, say it's based on Ethereum here, right? It requires people to agree on the use of Ethereum. Do you get what I'm saying? What if I don't accept Ethereum. Okay. I don't accept I don't even accept its existence. Right. I might use a service that would be built on it or something. Okay. But as far as Ethereum being a legally, or not legally, but being some kind of binding system of contracts that says you own some kind of property. What if I don't agree with what Ethereum says is your property? Then what? I really think this is why, or in my opinion, I'm not saying this is, that I know this for a fact. In my opinion, one of the reasons that I think Vitalik Buterin, who is the creator of Ethereum, lead developer, blah, 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 that I think that he quote unquote joked about having Ethereum control drones. And he was talking about like hunter killer kind of drones, like Terminator style stuff. Okay. Is because, how the fuck are you going to enforce what Ethereum says is a contract without a state? That's really the funny thing here. Okay. And I think the author kind of jumps on this a bit. All right. But this is going to become, really, if everybody's plan is, well, we'll have smart contracts, this will all get handled on the blockchain, it won't be a problem. You've got to accept that. Here's a less extreme example. How about a marriage? This has been done. People have gotten, they have their marriage contracts on the blockchain, right? Okay. What if, and I'm not saying I want to do this, so I won't use me. What if some guy, or maybe more fun, what if some gal wants to sleep with some dude's wife? Okay. She sleeps with him, or she sleeps with the wife. Awesome. Hot. I'm sure it was amazing sex. Okay. The dude is probably a dud. Now, what is he going to, I mean, how exactly does this work? Like, does he go after the lesbian and say, I can't believe you slept with my wife, blah, blah, blah. Don't you know we're married? And she said, well, I don't accept what the fuck's on your contract. I don't accept your blockchain that says you're married. I mean, like, what do you do about that? Like, how exactly, can you take any recourse on the lesbian? What if she doesn't accept your shit? This is a real problem. This is a problem with contracts in general. That's why every time I've said contracts, I went, whoa, contracts, because I think that's crazy. Like, you have to, how are you going to enforce those on people that don't accept those contracts? Now, I mean, people talk about escrow, like there's some solutions that are out there, but this is the part of the conversation nobody's fucking having, and they need to start fucking having it. Especially if you're trying to get to this, anarcho-ancapism future. Not new stuff for me to be talking about. I can give you the episode numbers from years ago where I've talked about this, and no, it's fucking crickets. Other people that have been on that listeners of Sovryn Tech, people that have been on the show, every time a blockchain company would come out and say that they're doing this, they're doing contracts and they're working with governments and all that, or not even if they're not working with governments, they would tweet at them and say, okay, tell me, how are you going to enforce this? And it's fucking crickets whenever you talk about how you're going to enforce your smart contracts. Because they don't have an answer. I'm not saying there aren't some answers out there that can handle some situations, but not all. And I think you need to have those answers, especially when you're trying to sell people on anarchism. Okay, let's go forward here. Consider an off-the-cuff example of smart contracts from an Ethereum advocate. Now, let's be clear here that this is from an Ethereum advocate. It's not from a developer. Maybe take it with a grain of salt. An individual wants to purchase a home from another person. Traditionally, there are multiple third parties involved in the exchange, including lawyers and escrow agents, which makes the process unnecessarily slow and expensive. With Ethereum, a piece of code could automatically transfer the home ownership to the buyer and funds to the seller after a deal is agreed upon without needing a third party to execute on their behalf. Okay, end quote. It sounds easy. Who needs real estate agents, closing attorneys, assessors, mortgage bankers, title insurers, municipal tax authorities, and all the rest? Just transfer some ether after the computers shake hands. But absent a global ANCAP revolution, I can't believe that that's in a story in the Atlantic, that phrase. That's both good and terrifying at the same time. Those intermediaries are unlikely to disappear. Consider what would be required for distributed ledger scenarios like this one to become a reality. Smart contracts require computational intermediation everywhere. Non-computational devices like parking lots and door locks and property deeds must become connected to computers. People would have to become willing to use machines that enter into decentralized contracts with other machines, absent intermediary protection from government, law, banking, and other legacy infrastructures. Point being, how do you get everybody to agree to these uses? And this is me saying this, okay, Stallion breaking in. How do you get everybody to agree to use this shit? And how do you enforce it? This is what he's saying. My argument that I've been making for years. Reading on. The problems with those old institutions are many. Good, he's admitting that they're problems. Because I agree with that, they all are. In a widely shared tale of voter suppression in the 2016 election, Eddie Lee Holloway Jr., a 58-year-old Wisconsin man, couldn't vote because the state's new voter ID law demanded that he show proper identification. But an error on his birth certificate prevented him from getting a new ID. In a future run by the distributed ledger, a single copy of Holloway's identification would be securely stored on the blockchain, easily verifiable when needed. For the tech evangelist, it offers a rational solution that would solve social ills by means of impartial technology. On that note, blockchain-based digital IDs have also been proposed for refugees. Oh, fuck, don't do that. Don't. And I know what they're talking about. They linked, I don't even have to look at what they were linking at. They're probably talking about BitNation. I've already said why BitNation is such a terrible fucking idea. It is one of the worst ideas to ever come out of blockchain technology. Just straight up. The people involved, don't deal with them. I have listeners that know the score on this too. But even just, in the abstract, terrible idea. Do not give refugees IDs. The only way they're ever going to make anything of themselves is if they stay, relatively anonymous and they don't get fucking labeled by their religion, race, or anything else. Anyway, It sure sounds good, but the scenario only works if the entire system of contemporary life becomes sufficiently interconnected to make it possible. All the departments of health and the DMVs and the voter registration venues, not to mention the parking spaces and the automobiles and the power grids and all the rest, would have to cohere around a common understanding so that the machines could execute smart contracts on their behalf. This would require a complete reinvention of public and private life. A different reinvention is more likely. Instead of defanging governments, instead of disempowering them, and big corporations, the distributed ledger offers those domains enormous incentive to consolidate their power and influence. For people like Eddie Lee Holloway Jr., who's African-American, that might mean even greater exclusion, as the very institutions that locked him out of the voting booth might suppress his transformation into a digital ledger citizen in the first place. Or if not, other traumas might yet, what do they call that? I forget the term, but like where they change, like, you could picture how this would make, is it gentrification? Yeah, gentrification, where, during a voting process, okay, where like the local government changes kind of the area that a certain voting populace, okay, like what representative, like what division of government that they can be able to vote upon, and then they'll shift it. Okay. Like Democrats will shift it maybe more towards where minorities live and all that, because they feel like that minorities often more, vote Democrat or something. Okay. If you have it on the blockchain, I mean, you can just instantaneously change that, which is, oh no, this voter actually counts towards this district. This voter counts towards this district and this representative to make sure that person gets in. Oh yeah, this could consolidate power really fast. It's not a long stretch, and I don't think that this is FUD. I don't think this is FUD at all, because we already know that there's electronic voter fraud. Why the fuck wouldn't they do it with blockchains? That's not uncertain. That's a certainty. It's fucking government. Synonymous with corruption. Come on. Or if not, the other traumas might yet face citizens like Holloway in a society run by a blockchain. A mandated DNA test could accompany citizens' blockchainification, allowing their ethnic origins and medical predispositions to become attached to an identity record. Financial assets would also be connected thanks to an underlying cryptocurrency account through which they make debits and credits, not to mention all the personal insights already consolidated by services like Facebook. There have already been, Stallion breaking in, there have already been companies, startups that, I should call them startups. There have already been startups that have talked about doing this, where you get not a social security number, but you get like a wallet ID of some kind for either Bitcoin or some other currency or something, and that you carry that throughout your entire life. Again, who controls, do you accept the use of that, of even whatever that whatever that wallet is tied to as far as the blockchain technology goes? Who really calls all the shots on that? I mean, to have like a worldwide blockchain ID system to work that way, like I said, and there are startups that want to do this and they have gotten funded, you're going to have some kind of centralized power that calls that shot, whether it's the developers, whether, whatever it ends up happening. I mean, that one is a little more FUD, right? That description, but not so much, because there are people that have, there are startups that are wanting to do that. Reading on, businesses might subscribe to this data thanks to the distributed ledger. It could be used to prevent their automated doors from opening for people whom a smart contract risk assessment service rates below a threshold of desirability. Left outside, privately contracted security robots might deploy ledger-backed ID scanners to sweep loiterers from private property. Once delivered and booked into jails, smart courts could automate sentences based on an automated assessment of future crime potential. Okay, now the future crime part, yep, that could be considered kind of FUD. Everything else in that paragraph, we already know that machine learning is getting used to assess judicial cases. We talked about it in an episode of Sex and Science Hour. Stephanie raised beautiful points of why this is a terrible idea. Even if you accept the political system, why you wouldn't want that. Okay, so you've got a problem there. These automated security robots, those are already happening, and they're attacking 5-year-olds. Yes, they are. Not Knight Industries. I'm trying to think of the name. I'm pretty sure it's Knight something. I talked about them years ago when they first just announced that they were going to release this shit. Now they're actually running around in malls. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny, like this idea that, well, the doors won't open for, for the right person. There's a Philip K. Dick story that talks all about that. And of course, Philip K. Dick has been long dead. And he wrote it a long time ago where, like, you had to do all these microtransactions just to even be able to walk into a fucking door. This is not a new way of thinking. This is not something that just applies to blockchains. A lot of technological trends have looked in this direction, and it doesn't see, like, I don't think it's so much FUD. The future crime part, forget about that. I think it's annoying that he brought that up, because for a lot of people that debunks his entire point and his entire story, because he goes so far with saying future crime. But he was just theorizing, so whatever. Anyway, and that's reading on. And that's just America. Imagine how a mature authoritarian state would fare under the rule of blockchain. Is this starting to feel like a Black Mirror episode yet? For Adam Greenfield, the anti-authoritarian left has profoundly misunderstood the corner into which an ambitious aspiration paints society. Quote, I believe distributed ledger enables the kind of central control they've never in their worst nightmares contemplated, end quote, he tells me. The irony would be tragic if it weren't also so frightening. The invitation to transform distributed ledger systems into the ultimate tool of corporate and authoritarian control might be too great a temptation for human nature to forego. Stallion breaking in, as I have said for so long, you could, with blockchain technology, you could create tyranny of the code. And the concerning part, there's two more paragraphs. I'm going to read them, okay, and then we're going to wrap this up. The most concerning part for me, okay, with it is that because blockchain technology, like Bitcoin, has the ability to offer all of these systems of control through the incentivization that it's also money at the same time, that it is also the currency du jour, okay, or if it becomes that, is that there's the incentive to be assholes. There's the incentive to implement these systems because you could get paid for it. And this is another problem that I have. I don't want fucking everything blockchainized, okay? Some things are bad ideas, and this is another statement I've said for years. Just because something was a bad idea off of a blockchain, it doesn't suddenly become a good idea because you put it onto a blockchain. You understand? Government's bad no matter what technology you attach to it. It's never good. It's a bad idea. Some of these controls are inherently bad ideas. Putting them onto the blockchain does not make them okay, but they are incentivized to get put onto the blockchain because now you can make money. That's why this is a future that I think is very possible, and potentially very real, because there is incentive. Before, it was like, yeah, well, why the fuck would I make something so complex like a door lock that wouldn't let somebody in based upon their ID number or something, right? Like, that's just stupid. Why the fuck would you want to do that? Just give somebody a key. That way you don't have to worry about having a centralized database of a bunch of ID numbers of who gets to walk into what, okay? It was just a dumb idea. But now, here's the problem with blockchain technology, is that you can bake in value. You can bake in monetary value into that, and then suddenly it becomes a good idea to the average person because I can make money off of it. Woo! Let me read just a little bit more. If this sounds familiar, it's because contemporary culture has been here before. The existing comparatively modest surveillance and control technologies in use by Google, Facebook, and their ilk, whose impact on governance we now know all too well, proliferated on the assumption that technology could make life better and more efficient. Nobody chose this life exactly. People adopted technology in sufficient numbers to allow industry and the culture that follows it to conclude that the market had decided what was best. Likewise, Bitcoin's triumph hinges mostly on the financial success of speculators who never had any intention of using it as a currency and who appear to have strip-mined it into oblivion in the process. Similarly, blockchain's future seems tied to the short-term vision of investors and entrepreneurs willing to speculate on a hypothetical distributed utopia without hedging against the consolidated autocracy it seems equally likely to realize. Quote, this is what happens, end quote, Greenfield says, quote, when very bright people outsmart themselves, end quote. Oh, man. So, again, I don't agree with everything that was said here. I could certainly take umbrage with a lot of the terms used. There are a lot of issues in this article that are problematic, but there are great points, I think, that are brought up in that, people want, look, understand. Okay. I think one of the abstracts of this article is that people don't understand the philosophy behind, what created this technology in the first place, what created Bitcoin. And let's say it's some, flare of anarchism. Okay, doesn't have to be ANCAPism. Some flair, we don't know that Satoshi was an ANCAP, right? I hope she wasn't. So, but anyway, so if you don't, this is another point that I've made many a time. If you don't know why you need Bitcoin, just use PayPal. It works. This is the thing. Like, there's a reason Bitcoin came into existence. I agree. That's one of the abstracts of this article, is that there's a reason, there's a philosophy behind why this is needed. And if people aren't on board with that philosophy, this technology could be perverted to do very terrible things. And like I said, could be used to, embolden, embrace, and enforce the status quo instead of demolish it peacefully. That's one of the biggest problems with this. To say nothing of the fact that when you start automating the fuck out of everything, there was a great episode of Sovryn Tech that I did. Was this a year ago? It was actually at a Bitcoin conference. It was in a hotel room. Woo! It was a good time with MK Lords, the absolutely inimitable, amazing MK Lords, which, by the way, find her on Patreon. Give her the hookup. She deserves it. She does tremendous work. Okay, just go to patreon.com/MK Lords. It's awesome. And Stephanie, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the three of us were talking, and we all talked about how when you remove the human element and you just automate the fuck out of everything, when you remove the human element, I think there's a lot of wiggle room that human freedom relies upon, a lot of cracks in the system that human freedom thrives within, that you eliminate. A lot of compassion, a lot of understanding that are, and compassion is one of the bases of human existence, of the human condition. And I think when you pull that out of transactions, you're not creating a free market system. You're creating a fucking robotic market system. And I don't know that that's inherently free. I would argue that it's not. You need to have humans involved to understand what humans need. It's not, look, life's not black and white. This shit's complex. Okay? And I don't care if AlphaGo beats everybody in the planet at the game of Go. That doesn't mean AlphaGo has any goddamn understanding about the human condition. Because it can't. It's good at a game. Ooh. That doesn't mean I want to turn over, every aspect of my life to it and then have all of my, all my finances attached to a wallet or, fuck it. No. This is technology on steroids, and steroids are, steroids are bad, but like, this is the wrong direction. You're not looking at human freedom. You're just looking at, really, this has such potential for more centralization, even if it doesn't work with governments. And again, how are you going to enforce all of this shit? How do you do that? You can't. It stands so in contrast to human freedom. The best thing you can do, all you're doing is complaining, Brian, and you're not giving any real solutions. Here's the solutions, okay? You can use this stuff. You can use blockchain technologies. You can use Bitcoin. You can, whatever coin you happen to create, whatever, you can use it. Keep it at very local levels, though. Regionalize this technology. That way people at least have the freedom to vote with their fucking feet. And leave it if they feel the need to. And they should be able to leave it without consequence. Because some of them are probably, one of the plans here is for people to be born with this shit attached to them. Fuck that. These are old arguments. I'm glad I get to rehash some of them. And I'm glad, honestly, in the end, this is almost a net win because I think this article is pretty popular. And if it's at least mentioning market anarchism, that's kind of a win, right? Okay, regardless of the FUD all wrapped around it, and you might see it as kind of a negative. Well, there's really no such thing as negative press. But these are points that need to be brought up. He doesn't say it enough. I wish he brought up the enforcement argument just a little bit more. He kind of dances around it. But that is one of the most important things that with any blockchain technology, when you talk about it, how the fuck is it going to be enforced? And people need to have goddamn answers for that. And they don't. The fact that two computers agree upon it isn't going to guarantee that, somebody isn't going to walk on your land or something, okay? And what are you going to do? And that person walks on your land, you're going to say, hey, motherfucker, look at my blockchain. Look at my blockchain. This says I own this. And the person will, it's like showing a credit card to a dog. The dog's going to look like, what the fuck is that? Am I supposed to eat it? And rightfully, the person's going to look at it, well, I didn't sign up for that. What the fuck are you talking about? hopefully the person would be respectful enough to say, okay, well, you feel this is your thing. I'll just walk away, but that's kind of the thing, is that people need to get on board with the philosophy behind these technologies. They need to understand why they come into existence. Otherwise, if you implement them, it doesn't matter if you implement them, because they don't get it. They don't understand why they needed it in the first place. And you're not really going to solve any kind of ethical or philosophical problems just with technology. Technology can't solve that. People have to understand why they want these things, why they need these things, why they want to have their money taken away from central banks and all that. They have to understand that. Otherwise, they're just going to hand it over to more central banks that just happen to be blockchainized in this case. That's what will happen. People have to know. They have to be informed. They have to be knowledgeable. Is it an impossible task to get people on board with this stuff, to get people knowledgeable? Yeah, maybe. I agree with you. That might be a problem. Okay, because guess what? A lot of people are goddamn stupid. Yes, they are. You want proof that people are stupid? Here, we're probably not going to get to game talk. All right, so I'll give you one little drop of game talk. I saw the numbers for the amount of people and the amount of money that gets made through in-app purchases in fucking mobile games, in like games like Endless Runners. Endless Runners means it doesn't have an end. You get me? You just keep buying and buying and buying. It's crazy the amount of people that play these things, the amount of hours played these things, and the amount of money that these things make. Yes, people, so many of them are fucking stupid. And it has nothing to do with their goddamn race, because most of the people playing that shit, I guarantee you, they're your white culture. Ugh. Yeah, a lot of people are stupid, okay? So what do? This goes back to my solution. You just keep the shit regionalized. You get your little small community and you build yourself up around maybe some of your blockchain technologies, and you just make sure that people can walk away if they need to. There you go. Because you're not going to educate everybody. This is why I've said, like, oh, Bitcoin, how are we going to grow Bitcoin? You don't need to grow it. Most people don't know why they need it. They're never going to accept it. It's not going to mean anything to their goddamn life. Okay? Don't bother. Use Bitcoin where it's needed. For people to transact in things, to get life-saving drugs, to get recreational drugs, to get banned books. I've done that on the Silk Road. To do whatever. Just leave it to the people that actually need it. Let fucking all the morons, use PayPal and whatever else. Giving them Bitcoin is not going to make them say, oh, I need to be an anarchist. Oh, we don't need government. Oh, we don't need it's just not. Get over it. Get over yourselves. What do you think you are? A bunch of colonialists coming to the Native Americans saying, look, we bring you culture. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I thought some great points were made. And again, like, no answers are being forwarded. I've looked at a lot of the responses to this article. Again, I don't agree 100% with the article. I think it gets a lot of things wrong, but it also brings up some very, very salient points, many of them. So let's move on. But before I move on, let me tell you about, here, are you concerned about the blockchain now? Let me tell you something you can get your hands on that might be a little more to your taste. That being, precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, all the precious metals you want. You just go to Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, rrbi.co. Let them know the Golden Stallion sent you. Hell, you can tell them why you're going there. Say, he did this whole thing about cryptocurrencies, and now I'm a little skittish on the future that some other people have in mind for me. And so I'd like to get my hands on something that has a more widely recognized value, perhaps, or something along those lines. Look, understand me. I love Bitcoin. I love cryptocurrencies. I'm not speaking against them. Okay. And neither is Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, because they accept Bitcoin. They are a Bitcoin preferred business. That is right on. That's the way you want to do it. So, decentralize your wealth a bit, just in case one of these things ever happen to fail. It's a great idea to do. Any wealth building guidebook, if it doesn't start off with that statement to diversify your wealth, you might as well throw that thing in the trash. But you don't need to throw your gold and silver or Bitcoin in the trash. You can convert all that, distribute your wealth and do it all through Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, one of the best businesses in the world. Jump on top of that. The guy that runs it, Tim Fry, he's the real deal. Tech geek, the whole thing. He gets it. He's not backwater. He knows the score. Okay, and he wants to give you the hookup. So go to rrbi.co. All right, let them know the Golden Stallion sent you. Believe me, they'll know who you're talking about. And we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech, a longtime sponsor. Really honored that they've done that. So anyway, all right, we're gonna affiliates. I'm gonna run just a little bit long on this one, but I gotta do my review of Wonder Woman. We got to talk Wonder Woman in this episode because this is a movie that a lot of people are excited for. I am in their number as one of the people that was very, very excited about this. All right, real quick. I mean, before I get into the Wonder Woman review, I just want to make this super clear. I am not, like I said during that ad, I am not against blockchain technologies. I'm not against Bitcoin. All right. Or, there's a few others that I'm very intrigued by. Look, I'm just saying, keep them regionalized. Make sure that there's always a bunch of them, not just one. You don't want a monoculture of money or of technology. You just don't. Like, I mean, imagine just for 1 second, just picture this. Okay. Because Ethereum is trying to kind of like be the OS of the blockchain or something, right? Like, imagine if everybody had to use Windows. Seriously, like, picture that world. Yeah, that would suck. I mean, they already kind of do. And so, and also, I mean, the other thing too is, the other solution is like, just keep this stuff limited in its feature set. Okay. Don't make it all like Ethereum's trying to be kind of the DNA of everything. What happens if there's, an exploit, which is entirely possible due to its very nature of being, Turing vulnerable? What happens when that happens and everything's kind of attached to it? Yeah, I mean, society's fucked. Individuals are fucked. So you want to have a bunch of these things, and you want to keep their feature sets very limited. That's why Bitcoin, the brilliance of Bitcoin was that, there's a lot of limitations in the technology by design, because that makes it a little more secure. And also, this allows for other uses of like blockchain technology. Just keep this shit limited. Don't have everything in one fucking basket. Okay. It's one of the oldest phrases in the world. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's because it's just known. Don't do that. I mean, that's like the very heart of decentralization. And when you want everything to run on one, well, you just centralize shit. I don't care if it's distributed, at least in its copy. Okay. Now, we're going to spend a few minutes. Let's do the Wonder Woman review. Honestly, I could do like a whole episode reviewing Wonder Woman. This is a character that, if you've listened to Patreon episodes, actually, where I've talked about comic books, and they come up often because I'm a huge comic book nerd. I'm 6'1", I weigh 205. I'm huge. I'm a huge comic book nerd. No, I mean, I've been reading comic books for as long as I've been able to read, and probably even before. So Wonder Woman is one of those characters that I hold up as like the centerpiece, really, of the DC universe. More so, I mean, you could say Batman's more popular. You could say that Superman is the most recognized character, maybe fictional character in history around the world. I would not argue with either. Those arguments are ones that I wouldn't argue much against, whether I agree with them or not. But, it's kind of funny. I hate this phrase because I think it's stupid. Behind every great man is a great woman, or something like that. That is one of the dumbest phrases in the world. Okay. But admittedly, like, the connecting tissue of the DC universe really is Wonder Woman. So Batman wouldn't have what Batman has if there wasn't a Wonder Woman, really to play off of. Superman wouldn't have what, wouldn't enjoy and appreciate, I think, a lot of his popularity if there wasn't a Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman really is the quintessential DC Comics character. Okay. And for her to have never really had a movie until now it says so much. I don't necessarily even feel totally comfortable just talking about this on my own. I need to bring in, and I've spent so much energy doing this episode, I think I need a doctor. Can I get a doctor?
Did somebody call for a doctor? This is Dr. Stephanie Murphy at your service.
And go ahead.
Brian just paused the recording before you heard that. Brian paused the recording, leaned back in his chair, sighed, and said, I don't think I have the energy to do this. And I said, why? Because you spent so much energy on that Ethereum bullshit? And he said, yeah, it just tired me the fuck out.
Yeah.
So here I am to help you with your Wonder Woman.
Woo!
To the rescue. I'm like a doctor. I'm like Wonder Woman. Now, I saw Wonder Woman with you. We saw it on Thursday night.
Yeah, we went Thursday night, 7:00 show.
The first showing. The manager of the theater hadn't even seen it yet. He actually
hadn't. They were doing their show.
Yeah, they were doing their staff showing after we had our showing.
Which
and
kudos.
He was sticking
Thank you
around
to the guy.
during the credits to see if there was a scene. Usually, he knows if there's a scene, because we know that we go to the movies a lot. We have this local theater. The manager will come in often during the credits, and he'll tell the people whether there's a scene or not after the credits.
Yeah.
And this time he didn't know because he was watching it himself.
Yeah,
And
there is no post-credit scene in this.
No post-credit scene. I felt cheated. I was offended by that.
Well, let me comment on that quick, okay? And there's more I want to say. And Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on.
You called the doctor. So I'm on call.
Yeah, absolutely. So the lack of a post-credit scene, I think may actually, after ruminating on it, I think it might be a good thing, because that really allows this movie to stand alone, because the DC cinematic universe, or extended universe, I think they call it, whatever. But the DC cinematic universe really has been in a lot of trouble. I mean, with the Batman movie, the Justice League movie. In fact, the Justice League movie looks terrible, or at least based upon the latest trailer, which you saw that as well. And I think you had a similar assessment. You're like, the CGI looks terrible. I mean,
I didn't want to see the movie. Actually, there were no trailers during Wonder Woman that I actually wanted to see the film. They all look terrible.
Well, I think Atomic Blonde looks good, but otherwise I agree. Yeah.
Eh.
Well, we've seen the trailer so many times that you feel like you've seen the movie, and I understand.
Yeah, I feel like I already saw the movie, and all I needed to do was watch the trailer because they put all the best scenes in the trailer.
Right? Yeah, the lesbian scenes and all that stuff. Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
and the action stuff. But anyway,
yeah.
Charlize Theron always plays the same fucking character in every movie where she's a villain,
except for Devil's Advocate, which I think is her best movie, one of the best movies ever made. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
kind of. Ever since like Monster, they're always and there's nothing wrong with having badass female characters, but. Yeah, I get your point.
Well, she's like this cold, calculating villain that like never shows any emotion, and that's like, I guess that's probably when you're an actor, I can't imagine being happy like always playing those roles. But anyway, that's a total side tangent.
Yeah. I mean, and I think somebody will probably bring up movies that she's been in where she plays like a happy-go-lucky mother or some kind of shit. But okay, whatever. Yeah, that's fair. But you didn't like the Justice League trailer. But bottom line being is that the DC EU, we'll call it, extended universe, is really in trouble. Like, I mean, they have so many problems. Ben Affleck wants to walk. I mean, like, there's huge issues here.
Yeah.
And so for Wonder Woman to stand on its own might not be a bad idea, because I think
the problem was, the whole movie of Wonder Woman was leading up to the fucking Justice League movie. At the end of it, she's emailing Batman. She's emailing Bruce Wayne because he found a picture of her.
Yeah, but
sorry, spoiler alert.
No, okay. All right, spoiler alerts, ahoy. I was going to do them anyway. All right, but hold on. So I don't really think that has to be a lead up to the Justice League. In fact, they could have done that. A lot of people were expecting to see the Justice League like at the end of the film, and they didn't do it. And I thought that was very smart, because all they're really referencing is a scene from Batman v Superman, which a lot of people didn't like. Was a critical flop. Okay, it made money, but it was a critical flop. So I don't think it has to attack. And they didn't. What would have been? I agree with you. I agree with your point in the abstract, because even if Ben Affleck showed up as Batman, I would have thought it would have I would have been like, no, bad, don't do that. Let this really stand on its own. I think they gave it connecting tissue because Gal Gadot, or however you pronounce it, she was in Batman v Superman, and I think she was the best part of the movie. And so I think it was okay to have that connecting tissue to that, but I get your point. But I think they made it just enough to where it doesn't have to be a build-up to Justice League, because you didn't, and that's why there also wasn't this might be why also there wasn't a post-credit scene, because that way you don't have to see what, like in every Marvel movie, that we go, like Guardians of the Galaxy or something, there's always a post-credit scene that is like hinting at a greater villain.
Into the next movie. This
didn't do that at all. Mm-hmm. Like, I really don't think it did. And again, because the scene they're talking about, the picture that Bruce Wayne finds in Batman v Superman, which you didn't see that, which I don't blame you, because it's 3 hours. It's tough to get through. I like the movie, but I mean, I like the ultimate edition of the movie, but it's tough to get through. So anyway, so it's really just kind of addressing that more, I think. But I agree, like, they dodged a bullet in my opinion, because they could have gone a lot further with making it a prelude to the Justice League, and that would have been a failure in my opinion, because I think they really need to keep. I think it's smart of them, because this is going to be, I guarantee this is going to be a huge success of a film, just because it's Wonder Woman, finally getting her own movie. And they need to leave this open to where it can be its own series and it never touches another movie again, another
But it
part of the
didn't.
series.
It's like, okay, I get it if you want to dissociate from the rest of the movies in that universe, in the extended universe, but they didn't. Like, the whole movie of Wonder Woman was like a story of Wonder Woman's life and how she got to today, where she's working in some kind of jewelry shop or something.
Well, it was an origin
France.
story, sure, yeah.
It was an origin story, right? And so it leads you up to the present day by showing her childhood and how she grew up and what she did in World War I and why she's still in Europe.
Okay.
Or wherever she is on Earth. Why she's still on Earth.
Right.
Or,
right.
I mean, I guess she grew up on Earth, but why she's still in the human world or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, like, I think we'll want to move past this, but, I mean, like the Patty Jenkins, the director who did a fine job in this movie, she has come out and said there's been some like confusing or conflicting reports on this, but she came out and said that the next movie she doesn't want it to take place in the present day. She wants it to be another period piece, maybe even World War II or something like that, which I think would be the right move. You know, don't keep this as far away from modern times. Wonder Woman doesn't need to be in modern times. Keep it as far away from that as possible. But some people are saying, like some other people at DC or Warner Brothers are saying, oh no, the next one's going to be contemporary. Patty Jenkins seems to not want to go in that direction, which I hope is where they go, because then otherwise, yeah, it would just kind of feel like a Justice League side story, which it doesn't. I don't want it to be. I'm with you in that you don't want it to be that, and it shouldn't be that. I think I defer in that. I don't think this movie was a lead-in, really. I mean, it can be treated as one, but I don't think it has to be seen as one. So,
well,
anyway.
Okay, well, that's very interesting because, okay, so now we're going to start to get into some of the things that other people have said about the film, but that we also observed. One of the biggest things was that, you know, there were some people talking about how this was supposed to be like a feminist movie. Mm-hmm. And even Wonder Woman, the character of Wonder Woman, okay, she grows up on an all-female island. It's Paradise Island. There's no war there. Right. Right? Because it's all women.
Themyscira. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, she's kind of like a goddess or a princess or whatever. So there's a lot of opportunities for lesbian stuff. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But in the comic books now, it's overt that.
Right. And originally the creator of the character Wonder Woman.
Well, I want to talk about that. Or yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead and talk about it because I think it's relevant to what I'm about to say.
Okay. So the creator of Wonder Woman, the original guy was actually a psychologist and a writer, William Moulton Marston. Okay. And the interesting thing about him is that Marston and his wife Elizabeth had what used to be called a cohabitant, that being Olive Byrne. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. His wife Elizabeth was bisexual. Mm-hmm. Olive Byrne, she was bisexual. They were in a love triad. They were in a love triangle. You know, and a happy one at that. Mm-hmm. In fact, Marston based Wonder Woman on both of those women. That's why one could argue, is why she's so wonderful, because she's actually based on two women, you know, with all of their attributes kind of merged into one, which I think is a beautiful creation story in real life, you know, of how Wonder Woman came to be, let alone her you know, fictional origin story of Themyscira. It's an amazing thing. And, you know, a lot of people misattribute like a lot of the bondage stuff, say, in Wonder Woman as being like disempowering, and it's like, oh yeah, she always like she loses her power if her you know, like if her arms, this is in the comic book, there's not a stitch of this in the movie, if her arms are tied up over her head or something like that used to be a thing like decades ago. It's not even in the comics anymore, really, but decades ago that used to be a thing. But understand that this love triangle of Marston and you know, Elizabeth and Olive Byrne, you know, they're all into BDSM. Like, I mean, openly, like they were all into this whole kinky shit. So like, this is a power trip for them. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't like it was disempowering Wonder Woman. It's just, you had to know what Marston was secretly seeping into this character, was seeping in so much revolutionary thought.
Right.
As far as love and feminism.
50 years later, people finally got it.
Yeah. And I mean, now people will talk about it. It's like, okay, so they're polyamorous.
He had to hide it at the time. Yeah.
Right.
This had to be very wink and a nod, right? But
yeah, which is the history of comic books, because comic books are so subversive. Mm-hmm. I mean, and they have been for a very long time. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, even like a Greek kind of island where it's all women, that's the island of Lesbos, where the name lesbian comes from. Well,
it's, Themyscira, but yeah, right, yeah. I mean, there's.
I know it has a different name in the comic books, but it's a reference to the concept of the island of Lesbos.
Exactly. Yes.
In Greece.
Yeah. I mean, this is like really, you know, feminism, like old school feminism. This is it coming into fruition, like with Wonder Woman, I think.
Well, that's the thing. there were so many opportunities for this to be a real feminist film and for it to be a lesbian film.
Yep.
Or to at least make some reference to the obvious lesbian entendres that are associated with Wonder Woman.
Yes.
She's a character, she's kind of like Xena. Like, everybody knows Xena was like with her friend, you know? Like,
Xena and Gabriella?
More than friends, right? Like,
I mean, even though she did Stoop Guys,
it was a lesbian dog whistle. Like, everybody, she was in the Subaru commercials, right? Like, it was a lesbian dog whistle. And so Wonder Woman is another one of those characters where it's like, okay, obviously this is lesbian, right? That's not really controversial. But it was almost like somebody either realized or was told during the making of this film, okay, we can't make it too gay and we can't make it too like overtly feminist either, because then this is not going to be a mainstream movie and it has to appeal to the mainstream. And so they really dumbed it down on those counts.
Yeah.
Yes, there were depictions of women training each other in battle and stuff, and women like, you know, shooting arrows and fighting with each other on the island and stuff like that. And there was the idea that there was no war in Paradise Island or Themyscira with all the women, but then when you go into the world of men, then there's war, and they're actually like, it's like a hell, like it's complete war, because World War I was going on, and like her mother warned her about it. So there was that, but it's like, okay, she's never seen a man before. She's grown up for whole childhood all around these women, you know, and she's gone through puberty, you know, with all women. Like, don't think she hasn't been with some of those women, right? And had some significant relationships by the time she gets to adulthood.
Yeah.
Right. And she's never seen a man before because there's no men on that island.
Right.
And then a male human pilot like crash lands. She saves his life and she falls in love with him for like no reason that's shown except that he defends her against the Nazis on the battle or the Germans on the beach or whatever.
Well,
there's like really no good reason for her to fall in love with him. And also like attraction has so much to do with how we're socialized and how we're raised. It's almost like expecting someone who was raised in a very homophobic culture to be attracted to the same sex. It's like, it's not going to happen. She was not socialized to be attracted to men, and so she's not going to be attracted to men. I just thought that part was really unrealistic.
Okay, yeah.
It's so easy for her to fall in love with him. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to say this like at this stage. I thought the movie was great. Okay. I have a lot of caveats around that fact, but I thought the movie was really, really, really good. I know you feel a bit differently about that.
I didn't think it was that good.
Okay. All right. So now with that said, I agree. One of my caveats, I agree with everything you just said in that I don't think that this movie was radical enough. Like, I don't think it was feminist enough.
No,
and
there were so many opportunities for it to be, and it just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, like I'm a supporter of feminism. Okay, and
it is like, okay, a man is the entire reason she wants to fight for the world and stay in the human world and not go back to her island, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that could be interpreted, but there were there's definite points. Again, there's spoilers, folks. Deal with it. There are definite points in the film that I felt like they were really conceding to making this movie not very feminist. For one, the villainess of Dr. Poison. They failed. This is usually, no matter what people think of this movie, and I think its Rotten Tomato score is like 92% or something right now, which is huge. Mm-hmm. Almost no movies get that. And
wow, that really surprises me.
Yeah, the only other superhero movies that get that, are like the Christopher Nolan Batman films, maybe like Superman from '78, which this movie shares a lot with, I think, and I do want to get into that at some point. But most people agree the villain sucked in this movie, and I think, like, there was no point to having you effectively ended up with three main villains in this. Mm-hmm. While one could say that shows the strength of Wonder Woman is that she can, on her own, because there were no other superheroes in this movie, which I applaud, that since she took three villains on, slightly superpowered, villains, that speaks to the power of Wonder Woman. I can appreciate that point, but all of the villains were pretty mindless. Like they had no real depth to them at all. And I think making one of them a woman, Dr. Poison, mm-hmm. I think they purposely put her in there to make it seem like it wasn't Wonder Woman against all the men,
I
against
do too,
men.
But I actually thought that was one of the most feminist things about the film, because there's the stereotype that women are nice and they're not strong. They're actually weak and they don't commit crimes.
Right.
When sometimes women do, and sometimes women are psychopaths. It's not all men.
Sure, right.
And also they showed I think the whole like Phantom of the Opera kind of mask that they had her wearing was like a shorthand for like, okay, she's been hurt. Right. And that's why she's bad, because she's been hurt. And at the end, actually, when Wonder Woman has the opportunity to kill her and she lets her go.
Yes, this is true.
So I thought that those two aspects were, it kind of speaks to the whole like sentencing gap. Like when women commit the same crimes as men often get harsher sentences.
Yeah.
And women are less frequently even like accused or whatever. But they do commit crimes sometimes. And so that is actually like, there are some feminists that are working to like change that.
Right.
Well, and it's based on the sexist stereotype that women are weak and not capable of evil.
Yeah. So you're saying the character of Dr. Poison is like really creates an egalitarian view, like or creates like an equal view of that. We're all capable of the same amount of good and evil.
I think so, and I think and also, but it also showed that because she let her go at the end,
right?
When she actually killed the male General Ludendorff, she killed him, but she let Dr. Poison go,
and she kills Ares.
Yeah. Right. And so it shows like, even though she was a villain, why did Wonder Woman sort of take pity on her? Because she realized she had been hurt.
Right.
Because like her mask comes off right before she has Wonder Woman has the opportunity to kill her because she's another woman, because she doesn't want to kill another woman. I don't know.
See, I think you're reading. You could very well be right, and this is a failing of the movie that I think that could have been a far more beautiful point if they gave us more backstory and more insights into the villains, which they just fucking didn't do.
No, they really didn't.
I mean,
the movie was already so long anyway, and I thought like a lot of the scenes of Wonder Woman's childhood were kind of too long, like almost unnecessary. We didn't need all that backstory, I don't think, and it was just like. I don't know. I mean, yeah, they could have spent more time characterizing the villains and making you really hate them and see them as villains.
Yeah, well, I want to speak to that because I don't think this movie needed to be an origin story. I like that it started in World War I. I think it's interesting that you weren't seeing Wonder Woman in her full power until, like, say, the end of the film. But I really don't think you needed an origin story for Wonder Woman. Just have Wonder Woman be there. You don't have to explain her powers. You don't have to explain what she's got going on. Just have her go out there and kick ass. And the action scenes in this were tremendous. But
and I think that brings up another sort of feminist point.
A
lot of people, and you and I actually talked about this right after the film, I didn't think that Gal Gadot was the best choice. I mean, she did a good job, right, with what she was given, but
yes.
I didn't think she was the best choice for casting for Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's a great actress and everything, but the way she played her was kind of like really playing up the soft side, and also just her physical appearance. Like, she really wasn't like, I think of Wonder Woman and I think of like a lot of strength, but also a lot of femininity, and that's represented in the way she's drawn with like buff muscles, but also big tits.
Right.
Which
is important. Like,
that's important.
I've talked about
that's
that in
part of who she is.
Yeah, in comic book writing, having like what you could consider exaggerated body parts and all that is incredibly important, because you have to get across in a single panel what this person is. And like, Wonder Woman is absolutely designed to be an example of what femininity, what a woman can be. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, you go with those over exaggerated parts. Mm-hmm. And you can continue.
And Gal Gadot just did not have that body type. She was more of a just thin, and you couldn't really see that muscle definition, which I thought was essential to Wonder Woman's character. Mm-hmm. And also just Wonder Woman is supposed to, this is going to sound nitpicky, but hear me out. I didn't like whoever did the hair in this film. Mm-hmm. I didn't think they did a very good job, because they had these amazing hairstyles on Themyscira with the French fishtail braids.
Yeah, right.
And when they did Gal Gadot's, it was like, it was messy. It was sloppy. Like
okay.
it didn't look good.
That's interesting.
They had like hair flyaways and like little bumps. You're not supposed to have those bumps when you do braids. Trust me. Like,
yeah.
I've done those braids before. I love to braid hair, and it just, I don't know. I just thought it could have been done better. And also, then they tried to curl her hair towards the end of the film. Like they had all these scenes where they would try to curl her hair, but she just kind of has like thin, straight hair, and it didn't really work.
Yeah.
I really thought they should have put in hair extensions or a wig or something because her natural hair was not doing it for me.
Yeah. Yep. So I agree.
She's supposed to have thick, flowing, curly hair.
Yeah. So I agree. So Linda Carter, who played Wonder Woman in the incredible, and I mean that, I love the series, the 1977, went 3 seasons, Wonder Woman. Linda Carter played Wonder Woman in that. And I think she has been, I mean, she was based off of the comic book, and she certainly has, I mean, her breasts are huge, Linda Carter's. I mean, she played, when you saw her being Wonder Woman, like, I don't think anybody looked from the comic book to the TV and said, that's not right. They said, oh yeah, you did it right there. And Linda Carter was actually, I mean, she's a, total fitness, fanatic. I mean, so she kind of lives up to a lot of that, of what Wonder Woman, could look like. I largely agree. Like, so I agree with your statement. Like Gal Gadot, I thought she did a great job, but is she my first choice for Wonder Woman? No. Like not even close. Yeah. I think her acting was actually like far better than I've seen. I mean, I don't have a problem with Gal Gadot. She's been in one of my favorite series and one of your favorite series, Fast and Furious. Yeah. I mean, I have no beef with her. Okay. I thought she did a fine job, but I agree. I don't think like I would have. There's a million other people I would have chosen. I probably would have went with some almost a female bodybuilder of a sort.
Yeah.
Or at least a fitness model more
definitely.
so.
And I think that choosing her for the casting and also how she really played up the soft side was part of softening the film and making it more acceptable because people don't want to see a strong woman.
Yeah.
They don't want to see a woman who is masculine or looks masculine or whatever.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that women have to have like huge tits, to be a woman or something. I totally disagree with that. I mean, I on a personal note, I love women of all shapes and sizes, but you do have a character with a history and that's known for certain things and that has certain things she's trying to symbolize. I think it would have made sense, and
I do too.
Yeah.
And you know what else? I saw some people talking about this in other reviews, but they changed the character of Wonder Woman a lot because not only did they downplay the muscles and the physical attributes, but they also took away all the America out of her. Like she had a lot of like America,
I don't mind that
and stuff. I'm not saying I mind it either. I just noticed it. It was different than.
Well, Fox News apparently talked about this. They complained that it wasn't a very patriotic film. I think that's great. It made sure to know that World War I is a terrible thing. It shouldn't be. And that, both sides need to stop fighting, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, I thought that was okay. Yes, that was a change that they made with the character, though. She doesn't have the stars on her, on her, whatever, underwear.
Yeah.
on her suit, that she normally does. Those have been downplayed
like stars
in the
and
anyway.
Stripes, right? Before?
No, not stripes, just the stars on the blue and on the lower part of the, of her outfit.
Yeah.
Those have been downplayed quite a bit in the comics at various points anyway.
Okay.
But fair enough. But I don't mind that's not there. And if it pissed off Fox News, I'm okay with that too. But
well, yeah, I mean, I just thought that was kind of interesting. Like, I'm sure that was done on purpose, right? And so why were they doing that? I think it was like there were lots of trade-offs, right? They made it so there was no lesbianism. They took out the America. They made her a soft character and they made her fall in love with a man so that, and also have a female villain so that they could show that she doesn't hate men.
Yeah.
Right. To make it more acceptable to the mainstream culture. Right. So they're almost like saying, look, she doesn't hate men. It's okay. Like you have to, every time you say you're a feminist, you have to say, oh, but it doesn't mean I hate men. I'm not a man hater. Right. Like you have to coddle people and hold their hand and say, oh, don't worry. I don't hate men. It's like they were doing that with the whole film. But in exchange for that, what they got to do was put in, a pretty strong, kick-ass Wonder Woman, but also there was a Nazi punch reference.
Sure.
There was a part where there's a German soldier, and it's not Nazis because it's not World War II, it's World War I, but it's clearly a German soldier, And she punches him in the face and gets knocked out and he falls backwards. And I think that was a clear reference to the whole Nazi punch movie.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they put that in on purpose.
Absolutely.
And because they knew that that was going to be controversial, they wanted to get away with it. So they softened down other aspects of the film.
Right. Okay. So now, a few points that play off of what you were just saying. Like, thinking about it, the lack of Americanism, I think that's totally right now. The best place for a movie to make money is in China. I don't know if they're going to allow this to go in China.
First thing, right?
Well, in Hollywood that's a new trend. But yeah, it was banned in Lebanon. I know about that. The reasons behind that. I actually talked about that in a Patreon hangout that we did this week that if you become a patron, you can listen to. But anyway, so yeah, that might be why there was a sharp decline in the Americana in it, because this is a movie that's going to get played worldwide, and they want everybody to kind of get on board with this character. The other interesting thing was that even in the comic books, you get a very clear sense that Wonder Woman talks with an American accent, or with just a flat accent. Doesn't have, because Gal Gadot is Jewish, or she's Israeli. Yeah, I mean, she's Jewish, Israeli. And so she has that accent. I applaud the production team for not having Gal Gadot get rid of her accent, but in having everybody else take on her accent on Themyscira.
Right.
Like, I think that's the right move. That's the sensitive thing to do, in my opinion. But of course, initially I would have casted an American woman, honestly, in the role, just for what's the term I'm looking for? Shit.
Continuity?
Yeah, for continuity, I'll say that. For continuity, fidelity is the word I was looking for. For fidelity with the comic books is why I would have done that. I have no problem, obviously, with a Jewish woman playing Wonder Woman. I mean, I think that's really cool. So anyway, so that was interesting. I think that also engenders itself to a more worldwide audience, to have that. But now I want to speak on the couple other things that I think that they did to soften the feminist message that this movie really could have and maybe should have had. That is that she sleeps with, she fucks Steve Trevor. Like, it's very, like, they don't show anything, and that's part of the problem too, is that they don't actually show the sex scene.
Yeah, this
is easily a movie meant for the widest possible audience you can get, and the widest amount of demographics, from the youngest kid.
I said during the movie, it feels like this is a kid's movie.
Yeah, they really made it for a very wide demographic, and that's a failing. I think they should have went full adult, but they're not going to do that because they want this to be a huge moneymaker. Because again, with all the problems that the DCEU is having, they need to make money somewhere because they're not delivering elsewhere. I mean, not that they're afraid to do adult movies. They did Suicide Squad, which is an incredibly adult movie. But I really think it was a failing to not have this be that. Anyway, regardless, so there's that. Like, and I think that was a screw up. They should have never had her sleep with Steve Trevor. You never even got that sense in the 77 TV series that nothing like remotely like that happened. I thought that was odd. Like, I thought that was really out of place. Now, you did get that one line where he's asking her, Steve Trevor, played by Chris Pine, which I thought Chris Pine did just a knockout job. I thought he was really cool. Of course, I also enjoy him as Captain Kirk in the Star Trek movies. But he's asking her, is like, do you have pleasure on your island, everything. And she talks about like this 12-volume series written by someone
that she read about sexual pleasure. And
she says the conclusion of it is that, men are needed for reproduction, but as far as pleasure, they're not worthwhile. Like, you don't need them.
Yeah, that was like the one thing that was like, put in.
Right. That was the one feminist line. And they should have ran with that a whole lot more, I thought. That would have been so cool. I'm so supportive of that.
Right. So if she really believes that men are not for having sex with for pleasure, why would she have sex with him?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. And that lends to the other major scene, I think, that was softening the feminism, which is there's this great scene where, I mean, it's actually it's kind of sexy, where Steve Trevor is on Themyscira and is in like this glowing pool of water. He's nude, and she comes in, he gets out, and obviously his junk's hanging. I mean, you don't see it, but it's heavily suggested that she's like looking at it or whatever. I think she should have had a look of disgust. Like, what the fuck is that? Like, why would anybody have, a thing like that or something? Like, I thought that would have been interesting if they went that far. Really? Like, I mean, and I'm saying this as a guy that loves to have sex and, loves women and everything. I mean, I'm just saying that would have fit. and I wouldn't have been offended by it. I would have been like, okay, and so that's another area where she's like, where they're making it seem like she's intrigued by the cock. That
right.
that made it, that softened kind of the feminist aspects of Wonder Woman.
The mistaken belief that makes every guy like want to send dick pics to unasked for to women because they think they're going to see it and be like, oh, wow, I'm so turned on. Oh my gosh. All I need is the sight of this thing, and I'm completely horny.
Yeah. I mean, and I think Chris Pine...
no woman ever.
Exactly. I mean, and for a scene that kind of gets... that sort of fails on that angle, I think Chris Pine did the best job that he could with it. And obviously Gal Gadot was under direction, be it from Patty Jenkins or whatever. And understand, this movie is directed by a woman, which I applaud that as well, because to some degree, I kind of feel there's a need for that. Mm-hmm. It's with considering the content. I think that plays up very well, even just in marketing materials. I mean, it's an important aspect of it. So, yeah, like those are a lot of the areas where I feel like it really kind of knocked, or like it failed in what I think a lot of people were expecting it to be, was like this ultimate feminist movie, and it really wasn't. That doesn't mean it was bad. Like I said, I actually think it was a great movie for what it was. One of the points I wanted to bring up was that Patty Jenkins herself, who again I think did a great job directing, this is her first big movie production, and she knocked it out of the park in my opinion. She said she looked back to the Richard Donner Superman films, which I consider the quintessential superhero films. And she said, I wanted to go for that style. I think she really delivered on that. Like when they're at No Man's Land, which is very cleverly named, and Wonder Woman ends up, just kicking ass and taking names in No Man's Land, kind of on the front lines between
she's getting
Germans
shot
and the
at
British.
with like a hailstorm of bullets, and she deflects all of them and crosses through it.
It's an awesome action scene, in my opinion. I thought it was so well done. But
I like that. Like she almost never really... She never wields a gun, really. Like she's either deflecting bullets with her shield and her wrist cuffs,
right,
or she's got a sword,
right.
And I think that was interesting.
Yeah. So she, so what I thought was great about that, and what made it feel like a Superman, like a 78 Superman movie, was that she has the line where before she's about to go out there, she's like, "Well, it's what I'm going to do," And Richard Donner, like. In the original Superman movie from 78, my favorite scene is when Superman saves. It's like the first time you see Superman in action, which is analogous to this is the first time you really see Wonder Woman in action, in uniform and everything. He saves Lois Lane from this helicopter crash, and she just looks at him and she's like, who are you? And he just says, a friend. And it, like, that statement just says so much about who the character is. And I get chills. I have goosebumps right now just thinking about that scene of Superman, because I think it's so powerful. And I think when she just says, it's what I'm going to do, and it was just a really badass moment in the film. So, yeah, I like that it harkened back to that kind of superhero style of storytelling. I think that was the right move, but it wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't what I was really wanting, but I appreciate it for what it is. One thing I think that we can, both of you and I can agree upon that was amazing in this movie was the music.
The music was great.
Yeah, the score was just fantastic. I mean, really, really intense. Granted, there was that original theme done for Batman v Superman that Hans Zimmer composed, that all that. That's really cool. The music was awesome. Give me some other thoughts, Stephanie, and we'll wrap this up here because we're going long.
Okay, so two thoughts. One about the female director. I really did notice that the male gaze was kind of absent from the shots.
Yes, yes, it was.
That was very noticeable. All I could think of was comparing it to like Batman Returns, and there's just there's a scene where, like, I don't know, it's Catwoman or something. She's riding.
Oh, you're talking about not Batman Returns, but The Dark Knight Rises.
The Dark Knight, yeah, that's
Dark
right.
Knight Rises, which we went to theaters to see a few years ago. Yeah,
thank you.
But yes, Catwoman.
She's riding on
Anne
a
Hathaway.
motorcycle, and she, like, there's just a scene where the whole shot is just her ass.
Following her ass for like 30 seconds.
For like several seconds. It's like, okay, that's way over the top, right?
Yep.
Like, that is what we mean by the male gaze.
Yeah.
It's a shot
Gaze.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, the male gaze are a whole different story, right?
Not Gays. Right.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like that's what people mean when they say that. It's like it's a perspective. It's showing it from a male's perspective that's looking at women and objectifying them.
Yeah, pretty much no ass shots in this, and there's plenty of I mean, Connie Nielsen's in this. There's plenty of like beautiful, and Connie Nielsen did a fantastic job as Diana, the character of Wonder Woman, as her mother. There's plenty of opportunity to do that, and they never took that shot. And I mean, agree.
Everybody looked really good anyway, and the action scenes were really cool. But yeah, no, they never do those sort of cheap shots where it's like blatant, throwing a bone to the men. Like,
right, right.
And I appreciated that. Another thing, final comment that I wanted to say was there was an interesting message in there, I think, about not being able to save the world. Because Wonder Woman starts out in the beginning, and especially when she sees like the scenes of the war, when she's in wherever they are, like about to cross over no man's land from the front of the war, and she sees all these people like starving and in trouble and about to die. She's like, well, we can't move on. We have to save these people. And everyone's telling her like, look, this is war. You can't save everyone. You're not going to be able to save all these people.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I'm going to try anyway, and she really wants to save everybody. But then by the end of the movie, she realizes that human beings have like good and bad in them. They have the capacity for good and evil, and it's not that black and white, and you really can't save everyone.
Yeah. No, you know what? I didn't really think about that. But it's there. I love that message.
Yeah, and I think that's a great message, and I think it's also one, this is another feminist aspect perhaps, but I think it's one that a lot of women sort of learn. Because, when you grow up, you're kind of socialized to think that you should be responsible for saving the world. You're responsible for making other people happy.
Right.
You're supposed to be managing other people's feelings and making sure that other people don't get mad or upset or unhappy, and you're supposed to please them, and that's your job.
Yeah.
But Wonder Woman realizes by the end that it's not her job.
Yeah.
And she chooses to say in the world of men, so-called, but she's no longer going to spend all of her time and energy on trying to save everybody, which she knows is a fruitless effort.
Yeah, I mean, and like there's that, she kind of has this naivete. Thank you. She has this naivete of like, all I have to do is kill Ares.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the war will just end.
He represents all evil.
Right.
And if I just get rid of him, everyone will stop fighting.
Yeah.
And then she realizes that, okay, that's actually not true.
Yeah, and it kind of has the message which I was kind of saying earlier in this episode on a different subject, which is that, look, life's very complex. Like, there are no simple answers to this shit. You can't just go, okay, we'll just take this out and then everything will be fine. And that message is there. Could have been a little driven harder home. And I think if Ares was a better villain in the movie, it could have been driven harder home. And maybe that's why I didn't see it initially. I'm glad you did, though, because I think you're right. And I think that that is a fascinating aspect to take away from this movie. This is a movie I plan on watching at least a couple more times, if not more than that, because I think there's a lot to take in. And I actually hope DC has already been on the trend of when they do home video releases of their DCEU movies that they make extended versions or like ultimate editions.
That would be interesting.
I would like to see that of this because I think there's a lot more that when you're
That'll
not
be 3 hours,
right, when you're not going after theatrical dollars, which this movie obviously was, which we talked about. I think there's an even greater film that's really, really possible here. Like Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, far better. It's a totally different film. It's way better. And so I think we could end up with the same situation with this.
One more message that I thought was in the film that I thought was interesting. I really like unpacking these messages, by the way, because like we all get them on one level or another,
consciously or unconsciously.
Like, we don't often make them explicit and like explain why the film sends that message. So anyway, the other message that I thought was interesting in there that was a feminist message was, so Diana, Wonder Woman, as she's growing up as a little girl, her mother is like the queen of the island, right?
Yes.
And she Diana is actually some kind of divine child. She's like the only child on the island, right? And, which is funny because at one point they say she has to go to school, and it's like, okay, why are you going to school if you're the only child? Aren't you unschooled or homeschooled or whatever? But anyway, her mother kind of protects her from knowing the truth about who she actually is, which is she is some kind of a god.
She's a god.
She is a god. And she tells her that there's this sword that's called the God Killer. But in reality, Diana is the god killer. Because only a god can kill another god, and she is a god. But she doesn't know that she's a god until she finds out much later. So, and her mother says, you have to, like, to the battle master or whatever, the woman who's like the head trainer of all the girls. She says, Diana can never know the truth about who she is. You have to train her harder than anyone else so that she, is ready for anything and she's able to protect herself. And I just thought that was really interesting. And she ends up becoming an amazing fighter, and she ends up like vanquishing this other god Ares that's plaguing everybody. Yeah. But he doesn't get rid of evil on Earth, but she does kill this villain. So anyway, she gets to be the best fighter partially because she believes she's mortal just like everyone else. She thinks that she's vulnerable. She doesn't think that she's invincible. Right. And that is something that I think a lot of girls and women experience. Women tend to have a more realistic view of their own skills and even underestimate themselves a lot of the time. And sometimes that can be a motivation to push them to work harder and be better because they don't have that overconfident, inflated ego. Right. A lot of times when people have an overconfident, inflated ego, they slack off. They don't try because they think they already are the best, so they don't have to push and learn. They don't think there's anything they need to learn because they already know it all. Yeah. And that's a dangerous attitude to have because it can lead to complacency and it can lead to an overinflated sense of your own skills. And so because she underestimates herself, she finds that she's able to do this great thing. Yeah. And only then is she told the truth about how great her powers actually are. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. And I like, actually, I think that was a message that I picked up on, was that was making sure she doesn't get drunk on her godlike power, that she learns how to like be immortal and not, it's almost like the concept of you can't have the sweet without the sour. Like it's sort of in that vein. It's not the best way to say it, but like it allows you to respect power when you know what it's like to not have it, when you know how to handle things without having it. It's like people that suddenly get a huge influx of money or something, like they waste it because they don't respect it. And I think it was kind of a teaching a respecting of power and everything. It was an interesting aspect of it. So the other thing I want to bring up real quick is that I loved the fact that Steve Trevor was the seducer in this, not of Wonder Woman, but like there's a scene with Dr. Poison where he is being the total flirt, the total seducer. He's trying to lay on the charm. Yeah, and he's doing a hell of a job. Get information from her or something. Right. That's usually just the stock woman's role in a production. And it was so great to say, no, we're going to overtly make sure, it's the guy that's going to do it this time. And I thought that was really cool. Like, I thought that was a nice role reversal that just added on to, kind of the film overall. And also, he flirts with her by saying, "You're a genius." Yeah, right. I want to know, like, how did you come up with this idea for this poison gas? You're such a genius. Yeah. And I feel like in a lot of movies that would work on a male character. They'd be like, well, I am a genius. Let me show you my dick. But she didn't fall for it. And that was the other thing interesting about that. It didn't work on her because she could see that he was actually paying attention to Wonder Woman. She could see that he was not looking at her the whole time. Yep. And so it didn't work on her. Yeah, very nice scene. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, that was a cool scene. So anyway, this is already, I think, might be the longest episode of Sovereign Tech ever done. So we'll wrap it up here. Again, I thought it was a great movie. The more I think about it, the far better I think it actually is. I still have, my main caveats with it have to do with is that, like, I know comic books. I know the character of Wonder Woman very well in all of her forms, and I didn't really get that. But what I did get was very good, but I just have to respect that it's not what I was hoping it would be,
And, and look, I know like Wonder Woman's not a full on, the character in the comic books now is openly bisexual. She admits to, having lesbian sex, gay sex and everything, and she's been with Superman. She's been with Batman. I mean, she certainly had time with the boys, I understand that. But so, yeah, this is just a different movie. And I mean, if and when an extended or ultimate edition comes out, I mean, it may end up higher in my rankings, which is amazing because honestly, Connie Nielsen, who I mentioned, who played Wonder Woman's mother in this, I kind of realized like she's in almost all of she's in at least a couple of my top 5 really movies, Devil's Advocate and Gladiator, which is my favorite movie of all time. She's in both of those. I think she's a tremendous actress, gorgeous, of course. Yeah. Just lots of talent, bottom line. And so who knows, maybe this will end up ranking very, very high in my list. I'm open to that. The more I think about it again, the more I really like it. I can't wait to see it again. And I definitely recommend people, it has my full marks to go and see. But Stephanie, I mean, again, you're far more negative, not your favorite piece of work.
Yeah, I just thought it was too long. It was a little bit too much of a kid's movie. It had this like innocent kind of quality to it a little bit. Some of the stuff, I just thought there were too many missed opportunities for lesbian stuff. And that is not to say you couldn't have some lesbian stuff in a kid's movie, right? If you have heterosexual love in a kid's movies, every Disney movie ever is a prince and a princess falling in love, right?
Pretty much.
And all the sex was like PG, right? I mean,
didn't even show
what
it.
was the rating of this movie? Was it PG-13?
Might have been. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't R. I mean, the only thing was maybe some violence, but yeah, I mean, they didn't even show a lot of the violence directly. Like when she plunges a sword in someone's heart, it doesn't show it. When she beats up another woman and takes her dress, it doesn't show it.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot of it's not shown. Anyway, I don't know. And the casting of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, I just wasn't super into it. So I would give it maybe like 5 stars out of 10.
5 out of 10?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to give it an 8 right now. Just just thinking about it. I was thinking when I first saw it, I was like, yeah, give it a 7. No. Well, I'm thinking about it and I'm appreciating it for what it is. And that's an important thing to do. Not everything's Citizen Kane. And I see, like, when I hear more about the production and what people had in mind, I see more what they're talking about, what they did. And when I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, no, they delivered on that. That was the right move. But I'm totally with you. That Gal Gadot would not be my first choice. She did a great job, but she would not be my first choice for Wonder Woman. And there's a few other issues. I don't know if I covered everything, but that's okay. We could just wrap this up. But I totally understand your perspective on it. I'm actually totally with you. The movie was not gay enough. Like they needed to gay it up a lot more.
Oh yeah.
And they did not deliver on that. And I mean, really, all those guys that were complaining, all those crybabies, they were like, oh, there's women's only showings. I want to be in there. I'm a guy. I should be able to see this, which I love. Joss Whedon, who no stranger to comic book movies, he did a great tweet where he said, he's like, look, I saw it weeks ago. There was already a guy showing. Shut up. And I was like, yeah, right on, because he saw an early screening. I thought that was good. Yeah. He's like, what are you going to do about that? It's like, it was open to, it was in a public theater. What are you going to do now? It wasn't necessarily open to the public, but then people respect it. Oh fuck it. Whatever. Anyway, these people that were complaining have to look like asses, because this really was not like the ultimate feminist film or
no, I was
like
going to say, I think if women went to a all-women showing of Wonder Woman expecting a feminist lesbian movie, they were going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, but it is, again, I agree with you, but I do think that for what it is, it's great. It is one of the, I would definitely rank it as one of the best superhero films ever made. I might put it higher than anything Marvel did, except for maybe Iron Man. Not better than everything DC's done. DC still, even though everybody forgets about DC because they don't have their big cinematic universe built yet, DC still makes has still historically made the best superhero films of all time. The 87 Batman, the 78 Superman, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. I mean, and they've also made some of the worst. I'll grant you that, but they've easily made the best in history. And Wonder Woman stands pretty tall with all of those, in my opinion. So anyway, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the show. If people want to find Stephanie and they hear that amazing voice of the real life Wonder Woman, at least in my life, baby, go, in fact, we got to get you. Would you wear a Wonder Woman outfit? I don't mean to put you on the spot. I can edit that out if you want.
Yeah, I probably would, but it depends on the purpose.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I don't know if I really identify with that character so much.
No, fair enough. Absolutely. So anyway, you have plenty of Starfleet uniforms. So
yeah, that's more my speed.
Yeah. So, but they can find you at smvoice.info, where they cannot hire you for wearing a Wonder Woman outfit. But
no, that's right. But I just want to, if you don't mind, I'd like to plug something real quick.
Please.
Check out my books on audible.com. I just released a book. It's narrated by me, but it's by Andreas Antonopoulos. And it's called The Internet of Money. And it's all like an intro book about Bitcoin. And it's a bunch of talks that Andreas has given about Bitcoin that got turned into a book.
Definitely.
And then turned into an audiobook.
Definitely appertinent to what I've talked about in this episode. So
yeah,
I agree.
People seem to be digging it so far. It's got pretty good, ratings and sales. So
yeah, do check that out.
You might like it too. It's The Internet of Money by Andreas Antonopoulos, narrated by me.
Awesome. And if you want to support Sovryn Tech, please don't hesitate. You can donate Zcash, Bitcoin, or you can just become a patron on Patreon. Just go to sovryntech.com, SOVRYN tech.com, and it will take you right there. And it's just at least $1 a month. Some people do significantly more than that, and I am honored. And you get access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content that way, and more content that comes out every week. There's so many people love the Patreon content, which I'm so honored by. So check that out. Anyway, there it is. We talked some Bitcoin, we talked some blockchain, we talked some Wonder Woman, we talked some virtual reality, all the good things in life, baby. And again, thank you, Stephanie, for being on. I will see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.